Good evening. It is 6:30. Members of council are assembled when you're ready to begin.
Thank you very much, Don. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores for Monday, October 27th, 2025. Welcome all members, everyone in the gallery, and everyone watching us via the live stream. Glad everybody's with us. Second item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement, and Councillor Grace has that this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledging the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. Our land acknowledgement gives us the opportunity to do a brief sharing moment. I just wanted to encourage members of the public, if you have not gone to the Bruce County Museum and seen their display, a very powerful moving display on residential schools, and a display that outlines the personal connection with members of Saugeen First Nation and their experiences as well. I would encourage you to do that. It's on until November 30th. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people, and we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing along with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation.
Thank you very much. Third item on the agenda is disclosures of pecuniary interest. I'll ask any member if you have one of those you'd like to declare at this time. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. Item 4 is additions, deletions, or amendments, and I would suggest a minor amendment to the agenda, looking by consent to move item 11.1, which is a notice of motion to immediately follow the delegations. We do have some interest in the audience in that one. Is there any objection from any member to do that? Seeing no objection, then item 11.1 will be moved up to follow item 8. So with that done, then we'll move on to item 5, adoption of the minutes. And we have a resolution that council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of October 14th, 2025 as presented. Is the mover and seconder, the Vice Deputy Mayor and Councillor Grace. Questions or comments of the minutes? Seeing none, then all in favor? That is carried. Okay, so now we're on to delegations. We have no open forum, I assume? No? Yes. So yes, on to delegations, and we have 2 delegations this evening. I just remind both of our delegations that council's allotted 10 minutes for each of our delegations this evening, and we do have a pretty full agenda this evening, so we'll appreciate it if you'd cling closely to that timeline. So without any further ado, then we'll introduce item 8.1, the Sister City Project with Passchendaele, and Mr. John Willits. Mr. Willits, when you're ready, sir.
Thank you very much. What I'm hoping tonight is to inspire this council, the Council of Saugeen Shores, to express a formal interest in the Sister City project to the community of Zombec in Belgium. What you see on the screen right now is just a small part of a Commonwealth War Grave Cemetery called Tyon Cot, which happens to be in the municipality of Zombec. There's over 12,000 veteran service people buried here. Oh, where's my button? Oh, back one. I will try and zip through this because there's a hockey game, baseball game on right now, but this is a project that's been developed over, I guess, the last couple of years, and the last time that I was in Zombec or in Passchendaele for Remembrance Day ceremonies. It didn't take long to get, oh, this is slow. It didn't take long to get enthusiastic support from members of the community when I started discussing this project. And I particularly I had an opportunity to speak for probably several hours with Kathy McGurr, the executive director for the Bruce County Museum. There's quite a shared history between our communities. Bruce County during World War I was about 40,000 people. And the number I was given by Mr. Streeter was there was 384 volunteers. That's 1 in 10. That's an incredible number for the number of people in this small community at the outbreak of World War I. 478 Saugeen Shores and Saugeen First Nations, 58 of those people never returned. 7 are in Flanders Fields. And the place that I'm talking about today is being Zombeck, which is the accumulated community that includes Passchendaele and Tyon Cemetery that happens to be in the area of West Flanders. Also has a fantastic museum. It's actually got a Michelin star, which I didn't think you could get a museum kid at, but it happens to be there. And they've actually had a twinning city experience with a community in New Zealand. Now, this isn't Passchendaele. This is Ypres. The aerial photograph of Passchendaele shows nothing. It's blown to smithereens. It's just potholes and mud. Non-existent. This is the larger city that they were trying to protect, I suppose. This is part of Passchendaele at the early parts of the show there. And I have in my pocket here something that I picked up from Crest Farm, which is where the monument is. And these are anti-personnel shot that you can just pick up in the field. It's very common there. They were in a shell about the same size as a coffee can. And these were lethal between 200 and 300 yards. Calculations in the Passchendaele battle show that there was about a shell for every square yard. A shell for every square yard. So when you see those photographs of it turn to a moonscape, that's what happened. And these lethal to 200, 300 yards, a can the size of a coffee can exploding in the air. I keep wanting to say next slide, that doesn't help. And this is the result. This is a Canadian soldier. His mother and father will never kneel at his grave. This is a local boy, well, not me, the grave there. That's Art Knechtel, the young Art Knechtel, the one that Art Knechtel is named after. He was killed not very far from this site. He was a stretcher bearer at the time. A shell, like the one I told about, hit nearby, and he died there. My understanding is his parents never had an opportunity to touch his grave or kneel and cry at his grave. There had not been, and that's very, very common. Most graves there of the young men came from our community. Their parents never had a chance to see and say goodbye at the side of their grave. Off of my right shoulder, about a couple of kilometers down the road, is where John McCrae's field hospital was, where he wrote in Flanders Fields. This is Flanders Fields. Off about where my knee goes there is a place called Crest Hill, which is the hill on Passchendaele that so many Canadians fought and died on. This is not, but this has happened when I was at Vimy Ridge at the Remembrance Day ceremonies there. That fella's there from Allenford. It shows you our representation. At the ceremonies in Vimy Ridge, they had they featured 5 soldiers, and son of a gun, it was one of our fellows from our community in Allenford. And the Indigenous community is very well recognized and respected, not only North American Indigenous people, but Maori folks as well. When I was there, they happened to be doing a special dedication to this particular gentleman. All in all, this is about the birth of our nation. 12,000 Canadians rest in Belgium, 7 from the shore. And the maple leaf still flies in this community. Oh, I missed a page there. That's on Canada Lane. This is the road that leads up to that hill. These people in this house, they don't know any Canadians. Their parents didn't know any Canadians. Their grandparents didn't know any Canadians. When Passchendaele was being bombarded, they were refugees. They weren't there when the Canadians were there. And yet they name a street after them. They have this beautiful park, which is on Crest Hill, which is where the Canadians actually took it. It's a beautiful place. It's hard to describe the impact that it has. That's the monument there on any given day. It's a particularly poignant monument that strikes me. They don't have any identification on their shoulders. They're inanimate. They're covered in dirt. But when you look at them, you see two young men, 18, 19 years old, whether they're your sons or your brothers or your grandchildren. It's hard to explain. That's the Passchendaele Museum. It has a pond just like ours. They get about 100,000 guests a year. We get about 25,000 in ours. But it's a beautiful community and a fantastic museum if you ever get a chance to go, when you do go to Belgium. It's a lovely community. Yes, they have Belgian chocolate and it's really, really good. And Belgian waffles are good as well. But it's a lovely community. They like biking and they love water just like us. There's a lot of similarities between our communities, agricultural-based, tourism-based, and a deep culture of remembrance, and about the same size as us. The depth and breadth of this initiative is cultural and heritage, education, schools and youth, tourism and economy, and a national profile. And in this economic and political time when we have a lot of discussion about globalization and reaching out and new markets, this is an opportunity for us to act locally. I'll zip along here. What I am hoping for tonight is a letter of greeting and interest from this council to the council in Zombec, where I will be on Remembrance Day. And I'll just leave it at that. I think the stories fell for themselves. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And so yeah, you made a request of council for a letter, and as you have heard before we started, we've got a notice of motion on that comes up now immediately following our delegation. So council will discuss that very shortly. But up until then, I'll ask if any member has any questions or comments for Mr. Willis. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. John, you have a great and keen interest in this, but you're not really, what brings your passion for doing this?
Oh, well, I suppose to a great degree, both my parents served. My mother was a nurse in a burn ward in the south of London after D-Day. My father also served in the RAF. All my neighbors' parents served in World War II. We even had an old guy down the street that would pick from World War I that would pick shrapnel out of his arm that would surprise the little boys in the neighborhood. Yeah, the people from my community, one fellow drove a landing craft on D-Day and had to use the fire hose to hose the offals out of the bottom of the landing craft before they picked up the next load to bring them ashore. My first boss at Transport Canada, the Regional Naval Safety Officer, Andy Carswell, was a young Lancaster pilot and shot down and was a prisoner of war. Those stories stay with us. My kids don't know those stories. Many of you there have no parents who served in those environments. So when the monument project came up, I changed my gears and I started looking at opportunities to find the best practices and ideal locations and what made it a place more than just simply a commemoration, but connected the people with the stories and the sacrifice and service that came before. And there's some beautiful monuments out there that until you actually see and experience them, it's so hard to experience. But through that work, I ended up working with Monuments Canada, Veterans Affairs Canada, the Commonwealth War Graves, an organization called the Last Post Society that's stationed here, the British Legion. And through those connections, allowed me to carry on the projects and make me more and more passionate as we share that same passion. Thank you for asking that.
The Vice Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Grace.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, John. And I spent 25 plus years in Owen Sound when I first started out in government. And the city of Owen Sound had two sister cities, St. Anne's Bay in Jamaica. And by the way, our thoughts and prayers go out to Jamaica. They're in for a tough 24-hour period ahead. And Miamisburg, Ohio, as sister cities. And that relationship went on for many, many, many years. And a whole lot of good came out of it. Culturally, economically, like there was a lot of good information sharing that took place. So I just want to say I think it's a good idea, the sister city concept, and I'll be supporting the notice of motion later. Either move or second, or I don't know who prepared it. I think probably, I'm not sure who prepared it, but I'll be glad to second it later.
Thank you, Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. John, thanks very much for all the work on this. I am seconding Dave's motion on this and very pleased to do it. I just wanted to say that I have had personal experience with the sister city experience when we lived in Ann Arbor. We were sister cities with, I don't think, about 5, but my husband and I personally visited the one in Germany, and on a specific sister city exchange. He had several experiences there through music, and he also had several experiences on exchanges with our sister city, Hakone, in Japan. And on many, many levels, it's just a great experience. They visited us, stayed in our home, so many great things. And I know that I was glad to see that you have the Blue Water School District Board on board with this. And of course, our students at school have had a tradition of these wonderful visits.
History teachers are over the moon for this thing.
Yes, and just this, about a month ago, where we had a class participating in the Legion had representation there as well at the cemetery, visiting all the graves and placing the poppies on the graves of people who had served. So I think that's great in terms of keeping the legacy of Canadian military sacrifice alive for future generations. And I just see this initiative doing the same thing. I just wanted to mention also that I haven't been to Zonnebeck, but we did 2 music education exchanges with Kortrijk, which is very close to Zonnebeck. It's a beautiful area, wonderful people, very, very welcoming. Yeah, thank you for all your work on this and good luck with your trip.
Thank you. Further comments? Councilor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, John, thanks very much for the presentations and the photos. They certainly make a difference. Can you tell me, have you spoken to officials of Zonnebeck as far as their interest in becoming a sister city?
Yeah. Yes, I have. And I can't, Yoakum is his first name. I can't remember. He's one of the aldermen there. We've had several conference calls on the subject. The last time I was in Zonnebeck at Passchendaele, I presented a Canadian flag to the mayor of Zonnebeck. At that time, it was a different mayor than there now. And we discussed the opportunity at that point. After that, the alderman, who happens to also be the chairman of the board for the museum in Passchendaele, contacted me, and we've discussed in several deals in terms of the details and any kind of concerns in terms of the continuity going forward, making sure that there was consistency and making sure that it was something of mutual interest. What happens next, who knows? It's kind of like dating in high school. But
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I have.
That never turned out very well for me, so
likewise.
Councilor Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I would just like to say, John, thanks for your initiative, bringing this initiative forward and giving me the honor of suggesting and raising this motion to get support from council, and best of luck in your trip over there, and please bring our greetings to the people of Zonnebeck.
Well, thank you. Any further questions or comments? Yeah, I really appreciate your work on this, John, and you've done a lot of legwork, obviously, to get us to this point, bringing it to us to consider. And I think now we can get to the point where we can write this letter with an expression of interest. I'm certain council will approve that, and then we can sort of go from there and make the more formal connections. And I, unlike some others, don't have any experience with sister cities, so it'll be interesting to see how you roll that out and make that happen, but I'm sure we will. So anyway, thanks again for your work and for your delegation.
Thank you.
So now we'll go to 8.2, which is the delegation from the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 155, Southampton, about the Southampton Cenotaph Project. And Derek Johnson is here to talk to us about that. Mr. Johnson, when you're ready, sir.
Thanks for that, John. That was a great presentation. Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Derek Johnson, and I'm the president of the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 155 in Southampton. We've gone through a turbulent 2.5 years while planning the modernization, restoration of our cenotaph in the memorial area at the corner of High and Huron Streets in Southampton. We are very proud of those that from our community who served in the past conflicts and went and want to ensure that they will be remembered in a respectful manner that reflects the strong appreciation we have of their service. There's 42 names on the cenotaph of those that paid the supreme sacrifice in World War I and World War II. But Southampton had more than 400 men and women who served in both wars, and Saugeen First Nation had another 150. It is our desire and intention to honor not just those who've died, but all of those who joined to serve our country in those two world wars. On September 3rd this year, a motion was passed at our branch general meeting to support the recommendation put forward by the Municipal Cenotaph Ad Hoc Committee, and as it was passed at the Town of Saugeen Shores Council. We agree on the memorials being constructed on the two western curb extensions at the corner of High and Huron Street to honor those men and women from our community who served in World War I and World War II. We also support the Dominion Plywood's Mosquito Bomber commemorative plaque and the Ladies in Uniform commemorative plaque being placed on the curb extensions on the eastern side of the High Street. We are asking that council directs town staff to work with Branch 155 in creating a memorial area that all in our community will see as properly honoring those who served in both these wars. And to that end, we commit to assist in providing direct financial support from Branch 155, as well as supporting any assistance in necessary fundraising. Our branch executive and members are united in this commitment to complete this memorial area so that our community can stand proud of what we has accomplished. We will endeavor to create an area our community will now and future generations can always be proud of. Thank you. I'm available to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. You made a request there of council, so our normal practice is to refer that to staff, although you're asking for us to direct staff, so we'll have to think about how we'll go about that. But I think, but anyway, thank you for that, and we will, well, we'll talk about it now, and by the time we finish our conversation, maybe I'll have a path forward. Is there questions or comments, Councillor Davinsky?
Thank you, Derek. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was part of that ad hoc committee that worked very hard, and we ultimately came with a recommendation, which you are mentioning here, but it was turned down by town council. And I just wonder how we handle this since it's already been turned down by council. Just a question I need answered.
Yeah, and that was what I was just wondering about myself. But I think now that I just had a chance to talk to the CAO about it, I think council has passed a resolution defeating this. So we will need to reconsider it. So there'll have to be, to initiate this, what will be required is a motion for reconsideration from a member of council that voted on the prevailing side when it was defeated. So I think what the path forward here is if there's now support from council based on the input from the Legion, and the input from the Legion is very important, hard to overstate how important the Legion's endorsement is, that perhaps to be a member voted on the prevailing side would be willing to bring such a motion at our next meeting, and then that would enable us to just debate it again, should that carry, and then advance if council chooses to advance. So that would be the path forward, I think. Is that clear enough? Councillor Grace?
Yeah, I'd be happy to move that. I think that does to help move things forward.
Okay, so we can work on structuring a motion to reconsider for our next. With respect to Mr. Johnson's delegation. I don't see any, so I would just repeat our thanks to you, Mr. Johnson, and to the Legion. As you said, it was a challenging situation, but you know, nothing good is ever easy. And so we're working our way through it. And I just really appreciate the Legion going back and discussing this and thinking about it and coming up with a clear statement on the Legion's view. That really helps council, because you know, council is just, I just can't imagine the municipality doing anything to the Senate taps without the endorsement of the Legion. So I mean, as a partner, you're a very important partner. So anyway, I think we have a path forward, and we'll look forward. Councilor Grace says she'll bring us a motion, so we'll be able to advance something. So keep an eye, and we'll, once we've worked our way through that process, I'm quite certain the municipality will be back in touch with the Legion to advance things.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our delegation. So we have moved item 11.1 forward. So now there is a desire, this is presented this evening as a notice of motion. There is a desire from the mover and seconder for council to consider this motion this evening. As you'll be aware, normal practice would be for this to wait 2 weeks because it's presented just as notice tonight, but they would like it considered tonight. So I look for unanimous consent from the members to consider this resolution this evening. I just need unanimous consent. Yeah, no objection. So we will consider the resolution this evening, and I will therefore, do you have a question? Councilor Grace.
It's just that on my version, my name is wrong. I mean, I don't know. The version I have, it still has Rachel's last name. Okay.
I will read it into the record correctly. If I
Okay.
don't, then show it. Me.
Thanks.
It has been moved by Councilor Mayette, seconded by Councilor Grace, that whereas the global sister city relationships, also known as city twinning, have been recognized since the end of World War II as practical tools for fostering international cooperation, cultural exchange, economic development, and disaster preparedness. At the intersection of urban governance and international relations, these partnerships connect cities from different parts of the world and provide opportunities for mutual understanding and collaboration. And whereas Southampton resident John Willits has traveled to the Passchendaele region and visited the museum in Zonbeck, Belgium, while attending as a member of the Royal Canadian Legion Remembrance Day celebration in 2024, and had the opportunity to meet with city elected officials of Zonbeck and propose the idea of a sister city initiative. And whereas both communities share deep ties to Canadian service and sacrifice in the First World War, particularly in the area of Passchendaele, where the Great Canadian Sacrifice is honored every year, and the Canadian Tynecott Cemetery, where many Canadian soldiers are interred. And whereas this region is part of Flanders, immortalized in John McCrae's poem In Flanders Fields, a passage that forever binds Canada's story to this ground of remembrance and renewal. And whereas Mr. Willits has already received letters or expressions of support for a sister city initiative from MVP Lisa Thompson, Saugeen Shores Chamber of Commerce, Derek Johnson, president of the Southampton Legion, Randy Haley, Royal Canadian Legion National Executive Director, Saugeen District Secondary School, Bill Streeter, a local historian, and Kathy McGurr of the Bruce County Museum and Cultural Center. And whereas establishing a sister city relationship will also raise Saugeen Shores' international profile, demonstrating our town's commitment to cultural diplomacy, heritage, and remembrance on the global stage. And whereas Mr. Willits will be traveling to France and Belgium, where he will once again visit Zonbeck officials and be presenting a Canadian flag on behalf of MP Ben Lobb on November 11th during their annual Remembrance Day celebration as a gesture of friendship and remembrance. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores directs Mayor Luc Charbonneau to prepare a letter to the Mayor and Council of the Municipality of Zonbeck as an expression of interest in exploring the idea of becoming a sister city with them. This letter should in no way commit the Town of Saugeen Shores to any binding terms or financial commitment of any kind, but merely as a first step in what could be a relationship forged over a century ago and rekindled in friendship across the globe. Questions or comments from members? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay. So now we're back to the top of the agenda. Give me half a second. Okay. So now we're moving on to item 9.1, which is 2025 Major Initiatives, Division and Capital Highlights, Q3 Update, and the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to present the 2025 Business Plan Quarter 3 update, a snapshot of our progress as we continue to build a stronger and more connected Saugeen Shores. This report reflects our team's commitment to progress, planning, and purpose. Our work is guided by the pillars of our town strategic plan, supporting community growth, building the best municipal team, fostering valued relationships, and creating a vibrant place to live and visit. These principles continue to shape our efforts and ensure we deliver meaningful results to our residents. The updates you'll hear tonight and that are in my staff report are rooted in our 2025 business plan, which sets out 44 major initiatives, 90 division highlights, and 42 capital highlights. These initiatives are tracked and reported quarterly, providing transparency and accountability to council and the public. Real-time progress is available on the town's website, and I'm pleased to report that our work program is largely tracking as outlined. At the end of quarter 3, we're tracking on schedule for the year with major initiatives trending at 72% completion, division highlights tracking at 71, and capital highlights tracking at 77% complete. These numbers reflect the dedication of our staff and the effectiveness of our planning and our execution. And as we continue to move forward with our work to support the strategic plan, I'd like to take just a few moments to highlight several key initiatives from this quarter's report. These examples showcase our progress across all 4 pillars of the strategic plan. Together, these initiatives demonstrate our commitment to delivering meaningful results for Saugeen Shores and its residents. Under the pillar of supporting a growing community, we continue to invest in the future of Saugeen Shores by advancing key projects that support our growing community. Our development services team has issued 165 permits, including 97 new residential units. Fire services, we have seen an updated nuclear response plan, expanded public education division, placed new self-contained breathing apparatus, and a new rescue boat equipment into service. We've also received our new Canadian-made pumper truck, enhancing safety and operational capacity for the community. Tonight, we'll also hear about the municipality's healthcare administration review, which provides recommendations for physician recruitment, partnership development, and administrative efficiency. In operations, we've identified priorities for future growth through our wastewater master plan and begun construction on the Southampton wastewater treatment plant upgrade with a significant funding secured. As everyone will remember, we received close to $18 million in funding for this project through the province's Municipal Housing Infrastructure Program, which aims to unlock housing potential by investing in essential infrastructure. And I just want to take a moment to thank all of our staff and recognize how hard they work on submitting all these applications to the province and various funding sources. Our work is clearly paying off here for the town of Saugeen Shores. Under building the best municipal team, at the town we're committed to developing our staff and fostering a positive workplace culture. For the first time in the business plan, we're reporting out on our growing people initiatives, which includes training surveys, succession planning, wellness events, which all support a growth-focused work environment. In corporate services, human resources supported the recruitment, selection, and onboarding of 8 positions across the organization, including, I feel like 8 is probably low, but 8 positions across the organization, including key positions with the Pride Aquatic and Wellness Center. Information technology led upgrades to infrastructure for the Pride AWC to support our work and our customers' experience. And a new cloud-based system for our operations shops has also been implemented, allowing our staff to access information they need in real time between both shops. Under the pillar of fostering valued relationships, engagement with our residents remains our top priority. The Engaged Saugeen Shores platform continues to grow, now with over 23,000 visits and more than 1,000 members, making it the go-to source for information on town projects. The town's website, news items, and social media accounts also continue to share information with strong engagement, again in this quarter. To foster relationships, the town also engages with and works with other levels of government. In response to new provincial changes that were not anticipated in 2025, staff have implemented the new strong mayor's powers through updated procedures and policies, and our finance division successfully completed a CRA audit with no adjustments required. Our staff's ability to respond to emergent items throughout the year continues to be a testament to their dedication to the town. And lastly, creating a vibrant place to live and visit. We are dedicated to making Saugeen Shores a vibrant and welcoming place. This summer, our first bylaw enforcement student position was in place, contributing to an improved community standards in Saugeen Shores. In community services, Phase 2 of Lamont Sports Park saw the addition of the Bruce Power Suppliers Pavilion, a water fountain with bottle filler, and the opening of the Harry Tatey and Dunlop Fields. This first phase of the master plan for the North Shore Park and Jubilee Park were also completed, bringing new asphalt trails, new playgrounds, sports courts, and tree plantings to these valued gems. Program planning for the Pride Aquatic and Wellness Center is well underway as we get close to the grand opening. And as we eagerly await, the Centennial Pool has had its busiest season ever, with a record participation in camps and swim programs. Lastly, the Southampton Coliseum also had a busy season, hosting the community events while we completed our first summer of our 12-month ice pilot here at the Plex. So I just want to give a shout out to everyone in community services for all their work that they've done in our parks and facilities and the Pride AWC this summer. It's been a very busy quarter, and this team's dedication directly contributes to making our community such an amazing place to live. This third quarter has been marked by steady progress across all departments. Team Saugeen remains focused on delivering the goals set out in the business plan, and the completion rates demonstrate that we're on track. I want to thank Council for your ongoing support and guidance, and our staff for their dedication and work, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So there is a resolution. The council received the 2025 Major Initiatives Division and Capital Highlights Q3 Update and Report for information. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Halpin, seconded by Davinsky. Questions or comments from members? The Deputy Mayor and then Councilor Grace.
I just have a couple through you just for a little more information because there's a lot of good news stories in this whole collection. In the operations aspect, there were some comments about the Blue Box Transition Program. I just wanted to ask, we had something before us related to commercial and industrial, institutional, and municipal, and we're hopeful of getting something before us. Do you have a sense of when that might happen? And also on the residential side, will the town be doing any messaging soon about the changes in the Blue Box? Because there's a bubbling excitement about a number of things being possible in Blue Boxes, but there's confusion with the two I can't remember exactly what they're called. I have a couple more, but I'll let you answer that first.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the Blue Box transition is a transition that's being coordinated by the province of Ontario. So municipalities are no longer providing the Blue Box pickup at the curb. And so what we have in the terminology, and I've only become an expert in Blue Box materials in the last several months, is eligible and ineligible sources. The eligible sources are related to residential sources. So all residential Blue Box pickup will continue as it has, picked up on the same dates. And I don't know that anyone would notice that January 1st that changes. Where the change does occur is with regards to ineligible sources. And so as you mentioned, that's industrial, commercial sources of recycling. And at the October 14th council meeting, council endorsed the plan to include bin pickups at the town's landfill site in order to support our industrial and commercial businesses in our community. I think that answers the question.
Well, it was, and it was about when messaging will go out about the additions to the collections for residential.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my apologies. The information will be produced by Circular Materials Ontario. So again, it's the province's transition, but the town will be sharing those. And I know our staff in operations and communications have been working on a rollout plan so that we can start sharing that information, which we anticipate starting in the next week to 2 weeks.
Okay, another one that I had just for a little more of an update. In the, and this is under capital, the website update or the new website, it says it's 65% complete. Are we getting pretty close to the new one being up? Because there's a lot of opportunities to, and one of the other questions that I had was, you know, people have asked, a number of us about when we're going to start to plow those other streets in Southampton. And I know the new sidewalk plow is here. And, you know, saying that routes are going to be posted on the website, it's hard to find that kind of information. So it's kind of in tandem there. When will the new website be up? Because I think there's going to be great potential for information to be available.
The manager strategic initiatives.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, we are daily working on our new website. We really want it to be user-friendly, and we want to make sure the content is clear. And so it's taken us a little bit longer than we had hoped. We were hoping to launch it at the end of this year, but it'll be in the first of 2026.
Okay, and one more from Capital, and then reserve some others in case there's other people who want to speak. The Civic Square construction is mentioned in one of the capital updates, and it's $300,000 for it's the area right outside the entrance to the Plex. It's hard to imagine because it's still under construction how it's gonna play out, but some concern has been expressed about the accessibility drop-off kind of opportunity. So I just, you know, is there a sense that people will still be able to drive fairly close to the door? Or will the door at the west end of the building, will it be available? Because it's not, it would need a ramp, but the construction looks like it's pushing any way to get out of a car to get into the building out a bit more. Is there a sense that there still will be a great deal of accessibility there? And I'm assuming that we're hoping that this is going to be ready in about a month and a half.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We could use the cold weather and the rain to hold off for a couple more weeks. That would be great. But yeah, I think looks are deceiving right now on what's happening with that space out front. The drop-off location is going to be a little further out than it was before to hit the main entrance. But what you can't see right now is the hard surfacing that's going to go in there. That'll make it quite easy for people to access the front door. So yes, fingers crossed, everything's in place in about 6 weeks' time. And I think everyone will love the improvements that are happening to the front.
Okay, Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Thank you, Kara, and thank you to all our directors and staff for presenting all of this information, accumulating it, organizing it, presenting to it. It is so, so important for us and for members of the public to have this ongoing accountability and transparency. I just wanted to mention a couple of things about parks. Yesterday was a beautiful day, and I went and walked around Jubilee and also North Shore Park. Wow, North Shore is looking fantastic, and it was great to see families, kids playing in the playground, and people enjoying the walk along the lake, and all the memorial trees that are planted so beautifully was really wonderful. So thank you, staff, for all that work.
Yeah, thank you. Are there further comments or questions? Don't see any. So there is a resolution. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? That is carried. All right, so now we're on to 9.2, Municipal Healthcare Administrative Review, Final Report, and the Manager Strategic Initiatives.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present Council with the final Healthcare Administrative Review report completed by Optimus SBR and to recommend a phased, data-informed foundational pathway before implementing the consultant's recommendations. Like many municipalities across Ontario, Saugeen Shores has increasingly stepped into the healthcare space, a space that is typically the responsibility of the province. Over time, the town's involvement has grown out of both necessity and opportunity as the town has taken proactive steps to ensure residents have access to primary care and to address recruitment challenges locally. While this approach has produced meaningful results, it's also evolved into an organic ad hoc manner without the benefit of a formal structure, defined governance, or consistent data to measure performance. Recognizing the need to align our resources, systems, and oversight, the town engaged Optimus SBR to conduct a comprehensive review of the town's role in healthcare administration. Their work provides a clear picture of both the strengths and challenges in our current model and identifies opportunities to improve coordination, financial management, and long-term sustainability. However, it is important to recognize that the current ad hoc and organic structure presents notable risks, particularly when it comes to financial oversight and accountability. Without a formal governance structure or robust data system, there's an increased likelihood of inefficiencies, inconsistent allocation of resources, and difficulties in tracking expenditure against outcomes. These financial risks could impact our ability to make informed decisions, ensure transparency, and maintain fiscal responsibility over the long term. Addressing these weaknesses is crucial to safeguarding the town's financial interests and supporting the sustainability of healthcare administration moving forward. Following the consultant's presentation, Council will be asked to consider the foundational pathway outlined in the staff report. A foundational pathway has been created which proposes a phased approach beginning in 2026 to develop the necessary requirements to enable Council to make strategic decisions in key areas of the portfolio before implementing the formal healthcare administration program. 2026 represents a year of strengthening financial oversight, aligning assets and agreements, and defining Council's input on both service and subsidy level in the healthcare administration file. To complete this work, the staff report offers several resource options using existing budgets for Council to consider. Each one weighs the importance of ongoing physician recruitment, as highlighted in the Optimus report, against the need to create a strong foundational pathway. These suggestions involve using current staff or temporary help to keep recruitment moving while gradually getting up better data systems, governance structures, and financial controls. Council could decide to focus on building the foundation first, which might slow down recruitment for a while, or consider an option not presented by allocating additional budget in 2026 to support both initiatives at once. This strategy addresses the urgent need for recruitment and aims for long-term success through an organized program. At this time, I'd like to introduce Michael Buja, Senior Manager, and David Lynch, Partner from Optimus SBR, to present their findings of the final report for Council this evening.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you, Town Council, for allowing myself and David to join today's presentation and conversation. I'm going to pull up a presentation, and we will, which we'll run through relatively quickly. And from there, we can then get into the conversation for today. I believe it is. Just want to confirm everyone can see my screen there.
Yep, we see it just fine.
Perfect, thank you. So, my name, as Jill mentioned, my name is Michael Bajaya. I'm a senior manager at Optimus SBR. I'm joined by my colleague, David Lynch, who's a partner at Optimus SBR. We both work within the industries and government practice of the organization. For those of you who don't know us, we are management consultants. We are a Canadian firm headquartered at Yonge and Front, right across from the Hockey Hall of Fame. And we work with municipalities across Ontario and Canada broadly, as well as in the areas of financial services, experience management, technology services, and data and technology broadly. So with that said, the presentation we have today will cover these main topics. So essentially aligning everyone on what the project we undertook was focused on, going through the questions we sought to answer, how we answered them, the actual answers to themselves, and then going through the recommendations and phased implementation approach. At Optimus, every one of our projects goes through or has two main elements attached to it. So it's called a project mission and success. A mission is essentially the nuts and bolts that we've agreed we will answer or work through. And success are the intangible elements at the end of a project beyond just the deliverables that our partners will receive. So without reading all of the words on the slide, and as Jill mentioned, this project was really focused from a mission perspective on undertaking a review of healthcare administration within the town to understand how can we potentially work on operational efficiency, financial management, and resource planning. It should be noted that this review did have a focus on family physician recruitment and retention as well, which impacted, I'll say, elements that were included in the core of the review. In terms of success, I won't go through the 4 items listed there, but essentially it was a strong understanding of the current state today, an understanding of resource needs for the future, and recommendations for the future as well. In terms of, sorry for that, I have an overexcited mouse sometimes. In terms of the core for this conversation, we'll go through the 2 questions, we'll talk about how, and then we'll answer those and provide some overview on the recommendations. In our final report that you all will have seen, we had 2 core questions that we were seeking to answer. So the first was, should we, the town of Saugeen Shores, continue to be in the business of supporting healthcare administration, including physician recruitment? And the second was, if yes to the first question, how many physicians are needed in the coming 5, 10, or 15 years? And so with those as a baseline, what we did is these 6 steps that you see on the slide. So we engaged key stakeholders. We did a review of financials, of infrastructure, of processes, as we knew and were able to identify them. We did have conversations with 3 comparators there, and then we developed some future state recommendations to get to the point where we're at now. And now, driving directly to the answer of should we continue to be in the business? From our perspective, yes, the town should continue to have a role in healthcare administration, including physician recruitment and retention. This, however, should take the place, or take the form, I should say, of a formal healthcare administration program. So one that adds increased rigor, it adds standardization, has the appropriate governance, staffing, and supports to really drive towards longer-term cost containment, financial management, and ensuring that we are driving towards the objectives and the goals that we as the town and through yourselves as council want to see in the long term for our community as it relates to healthcare. And in terms of what that looks like, when we talk about the recommendations that were presented in our report, ultimately what we were looking at and focusing on here was developing a foundational model for the town. And so, as we think about how do we effectively build upon the strength that and the dedication that you just heard your CAO talking about staff, which we very much saw with the program, we thought the development of this foundational program, much like building a house, getting that base in place will help to achieve multiple benefits. And 5 of them are listed on the screen here that you see. Without going into each of them in too great of detail, ultimately it will allow the town via council to define the role that it wants to play within healthcare. It will help ensure that we have the right information and data and evidence to ensure we're making the appropriate decisions. It will help us to actually codify those core activities and then standardize them and improve upon them. We'll be able to actually see from input to output and outcome the activities that the town is undertaking so that we can tell the great successes that the town is having in this space. And lastly, in the medium and longer terms, it allows the town to continue to grow and mature in this space. And so with that, what we ended up developing was a series of recommendations and actions. So to orient the group to that, what we mean by a recommendation is a higher level activity. And then when we talk about actions, it's how we make it a little bit more tactical and tangible for the town. And you can see on the slide here, we had 1 overarching recommendation supported by 3 follow-on recommendations with a grand total of 9 actions. Once again, because of time and wanting to respect the allotment we've received, we won't go through each of these in detail, but The overarching recommendation really is the development of a formal healthcare administration program, which really starts to consolidate financial and other information inputs. It allows for the development of, I'll say, greater rigor and governance. And it's supported in that first action that you see there by having a coordinator position who can dedicate time and effort to this. One of the challenges we saw in the current state was that while the town has had success in this area, it's largely been undertaken through the strength of the team you have. And as you heard Jill mention, it does create some risk at points when we have staff working on pieces over and above their expected, I'll say, activities. The second or the first recommendation you see there in orange is focused on formalizing physician recruitment and retention. And we have 5 actions in particular, but really it's how do we think about physician recruitment and retention? How do we develop an appropriate package? How do we ensure that we have consistency and rigor through these elements as we move forward? Recommendation 2 is bringing the existing medical facilities today fully into the town's asset management policy, plan, and processes. And lastly, once we've completed all of these elements, recommendation 3 is updating all of our contractual relationships and all of our agreements so that they're within this new system structure and goals that we as a town, through yourselves as council, have set and defined for Saugeen Shores. As we looked at what this would mean for the town, and taking that first answer of yes, staying in the space of healthcare administration, we looked at multiple factors to understand how many physicians would the town need moving forwards. And so we looked at elements such as expected population growth. We looked at the existing physician complement today. We looked at appropriate sizes of patient or practice loads, as well as even the age of your physicians to understand what should this be. And on the bottom right of the screen there in light blue, what you can see is the number of recruitments required. So today, without all of the other elements and all the math included that is included in the report, you can see that there's 18 physicians that operate within Saugeen Shores today. About 11 of those operate within the town's facilities, 7 operating outside of that. If we were trying to get to a near zero attachment rate, we would need to have 4 new physicians, ideally as soon as possible. And to make sure we understand what some of these terms mean, an unattached patient would be someone who lives within Saugeen Shores, but has no formal family physician that they are attached to. And so right now, there's roughly about 17% of the town that do not have family physicians. And that is largely often identified through individual responses and or understanding existing patient populations within the physicians that are there. In a 5-year time period, building from today's 18 staff members, or 18 physicians, sorry, we would need to add 6 more to get to 24. In 10 years, we would need to get to 26. And in 15 years, we would need to get to 27 total. One or a couple of elements related to what you're seeing on the slide. To be fully clear, the +4, +6, +8 is not in addition to one another. So it is not by 2030, we actually need 10. It is a cumulative. We've had 4, now we're adding 2, et cetera, et cetera. And the other element that's not captured on this slide, but is detailed in our report, is considering physician retirements as well. So understanding how does potential retirement influence the amount of recruitment required is captured in our report. And in terms of how this all rolls out and comes together, we've created this phased implementation plan that you can see a depiction of here. It's across roughly a 24-month or 2-year time period, but it really focuses on getting some of those quick wins and foundational elements in at the start. So one of those foundational elements being ensuring we have the appropriate staffing to support this, as well as bringing in those medical facilities to the asset management plan and processes, and then uses the momentum that's gathered from that, the additional, I'll say, effort and ability to conduct these activities, and brings that forward into some of the subsequent actions that you see on the slide here. That is the end of our presentation formally as we have it. I will stop sharing my screen and happy to take any questions or comments from anyone.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. So there is a recommendation here, but it will involve council to fill in its preferred options. So I'll just dispense with reading it for now until I've heard the conversation from council. So we'll ask for questions or comments from members, starting with the deputy mayor.
Thank you, and through you. It's a very full report and kind of scary to imagine the number of doctors needed by just a couple years down the road. Personally, pausing efforts for me, which I think was one of the options, that's not a path that I would support going forward. I like option 3, which continues work and has a part-time situation. I wish we could do this without imagining another staff person, but you know, that seems to be embedded in all this. I wanted to ask a question though. So option 3 is the one that I see as having the greatest potential. Has there been any additional information from the province about any kind of support for the situation in rural Ontario? Is there anything that has even caught anybody's attention in the last couple of months that has any kind of promise?
I can answer that.
Go ahead, Jill.
For you, Mr. Mayor. The primary care action teams that Jane Philpott is spearheading is really the province's effort to make sure that every person in Ontario has a family physician. So as that rolls out, things could improve. We did our area called NOH, was a priority area in the last round of funding. And we did receive about 1/5 of what we asked for. So, you know, it's a step in the right direction, but that is the effort from the province to ensure that everybody has a family doctor.
I was going to actually ask you, that's a nice little group, the NOH group. I was going to ask what you did with the about $1 million that you received. Can you give us any idea of how that's been spent or will be spent?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm more in a supportive role. I'm not actually in an implementation role of that funding. It's being rolled out through actually the Kincardine Family Health Team, in support by the Grey Bruce Ontario Health Team as well. So the last time I spoke to those 2 individuals, they were figuring out, okay, we asked for 5 million, we only got $1 million. How are we going to, you know, what path forward are we going to take to be as equitable as possible? Because of course, NOH is a fairly large region.
One thing I was going to suggest, and I'll suggest it now since it's come up, was that this council should request a delegation from the Ontario Health Team for Grey Bruce, because we received a delegation at Bruce County from them. It was very informative, and we could have a dialogue with them about what they're doing directly. So I think that's a thing we should do. Councillor Grace and then Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. And thank you, Jill, and thank you, Michael, for the presentation. This is an immense report. And I was saying to Jill before the meeting, it's great that we have this. What it's telling us is very sobering and a lot to take in, but it's important. We can't improve without knowing all of these realities. I have one question, going back to, it was sort of near the beginning of the report, and there was a statement saying that there are patients that stay on the rosters of physicians in other geographical regions while residing elsewhere, that is a weakness for us. It underestimates the number of residents here with a primary care physician in town. So I guess could you elaborate on that and how significant is that as a factor for us?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So one of the challenges when it comes to looking at attachment rates is that they don't follow geography perfectly. So as an example, someone may have recently moved into the NOH area code from somewhere else, and they may still be attached to a physician in their previous area code, or wherever that may be. And so while we're able to look at and understand broadly using actually OHT data, roughly a 17-ish% unattachment rate. What we don't actually know is how many of those individuals are receiving care within the town of Saugeen Shores, which can then negatively impact at points the ability to understand I'll say roster size of physicians. So physicians within rural settings typically will have a roster size somewhere near 800 to 900 patients, and that's because they take on multiple roles, responsibilities. While we can do some, I'll say, math to say, okay, here's roughly how many we think we have, it's hard to know with any exact certainty that exact number of patients who may not be getting that care close to home or may just be rostered from an old physician, but not actually receiving regular care.
Thank you for that explanation. Yeah, I think just from talking to many friends, acquaintances, residents who've contacted all of us, I'm sure, about needing a doctor, I believe that Healthcare Connect has made a change recently. That's what I've been told, but previously you could not access Healthcare Connect services without cutting loose from your previous physician. Let's say you lived in Hamilton and you wanted, to put your name on the list for somebody up here if you moved up here. I think that may have changed, which is good. But I think that's one of the reasons why we have this discrepancy or this issue. I would say that those people who are still keeping those physicians elsewhere in other geographical regions are doing it because they're afraid of being without a physician at all. And they still need a physician here. That's what they want. I, like the deputy mayor, absolutely would not want to pause physician recruitment at this point. I don't see that as an option. Whether it's part-time or full-time, I mean, it's not a lot of difference in the cost. And I guess if we could get results, good positive results more quickly within a year, which option 4 is telling us, then I might, I think I would probably be going with option 4. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Mayette.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I had the exact same question about the orphan patient list and people accessing who have already had a physician in the previous location, so I'll let it go.
Okay, further questions? I'll get the Vice Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Halpin and Davinsky.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Jill. Jill, I think I know the answer to this question, but just from members of the public and council. The cost for the consulting work to date for this report is, give us the number, and secondly, how was it financed?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Mayor. We budgeted $100,000 through the one-time efficiency fund that was unspent, and the consultant cost was just under that.
Thanks for that. And if we Well, the creating of the foundational path, will that require more consulting work, Jill, or will that be carried out by staff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the question. That would not include the consultant. That is just in-house.
The other question about the orphan patient list, I talked to you today about this, but just for members of the public again and council. We have about 1,000 orphan patients. If you use the number from Healthcare Connect, about 1,000. But you were saying today, Joe, that it could be a lot higher than that. Can you explain why it might be 3,000 or 4,000?
Thank you for the question. And through you, Mr. Mayor, just kind of piggyback on the conversation we just had. The reason is because it's underrepresenting the number of people in our community that actually need a primary care physician because they're afraid, as Councillor Grace indicated, they're afraid to give up their doctor from wherever they came from, because that is how you access our system. You need a primary care doctor to access the healthcare system. So people are afraid if they, de-roster themselves from wherever they've moved from or come from, that they won't have that, that access point. So that's why the Healthcare Connects number is not an accurate representation of the actual number of people in our community that need a doctor.
I have a question for the consultants, if I might. If you could name two main reasons why family physicians are either not going into the family physician business or getting out of doctrine of medicine, what would the two main reasons be?
So through the mayor, there's a lot of, I'll say, dynamics within the healthcare sector broadly. And it's difficult to distill it down to a couple key elements. Now, one, I'll say, long-standing concern of family physicians has been around the level of expectations and effort placed upon them, as well as then what they are able to, I'll say, work with the province to then recoup for their efforts. That realistically leads to, I'll say, some burnout and some challenges with physicians. So many might be leaving the profession or leaving the specialization as a result of that. There's also just been, I'll say, broadly a change within the physician landscape. So things like, generational changes on where new graduates decide to specialize as they're going through their healthcare training, as well as even when you do have physicians within the family specialization or the general family practice specialization, they take on different roles within their personal lives as well. Increased family obligations of some, and others do make some challenges. But those would be some of the elements. But like I said, it is a very dynamic and I'll say complex system.
I've spoken with several doctors, and one of the main issues they seem to have is with administration, with paperwork, with not being able to be a doctor from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock, where they have a tremendous amount of paperwork, administrative work, and then they come back at night and do more paperwork. Have you found that with any of your studies throughout the province of Ontario, further abroad?
So through the mayor, that's been a long-standing concern of many within the section of general and family practice, going back, I'd say probably 15 plus years. Within the existing negotiations that are taking place between the Ontario Medical Association as well as the province, that is actually an area that is being further explored and discussed. Now, what the final answer will be and what the exact structure will be and the impact of that, it's difficult for us to say, as we're not involved in those conversations.
I just want to make a comment, Mr. Mayor, if I could, and I've been following this story, CBC report, Mayor Kobayashi out in Colwood, Victoria, BC, whether you're familiar with this story or not. But the municipality, 5 years ago, the mayor of that municipality lost his family doctor. And he made a commitment to the community that he was going to recruit family doctors. And so what they did, we're probably some people shaking their heads over this, but I'm kind of intrigued by this idea where they're recruiting their own family doctors and hiring them as municipal employees. Their salary, which I've researched, we won't give it out tonight, but you know what their salaries are. Their pension plan, they have town benefits, long-term, short-term disability. They have 9 to 5 working hours with no administrative work, no paperwork. In other words, doctors are being doctors. And I'm just wondering if, you know, and I know when the mayor first introduced the idea, the comment came back was hell will freeze over before that would ever work. In other words, he was given no chance was this going to survive in his municipality in Colwood, Victoria, BC. Over the last year, council finally approved his wishes. The province, British Columbia, finally endorsed it, where payments were submitted to the province. Doctors were being doctors, and administratively, the municipality sent in the requisitions for payments, and on a fairly revenue neutral basis. They had some other revenue producers that they're making work out there, but they're making the model work. And in the last year, they've hired 3 family doctors by the municipality. And I know some people probably shake their head, that's a crazy idea. But you know, I was on the physician recruitment team for 4 years. And Jill, you've worked so hard. And it's kind of a thankless job, many days I know. But I guess my question, Jill, is over the last 5 years, dating back to the start of COVID, through our efforts through physician recruitment, how many physicians have we recruited over the last 5 years?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question. We had 3. So that would be Dr. Musni, Dr. Khan, and who am I forgetting? Yeah.
So, Mr. Mayor and Council, I want to float that idea because Langley, I think, as with Kamloops, are now formalizing a plan to hire their own municipal doctors. The town of Arroyo was considering it, but the $1.5 million rehabilitation to the town hall was too steep, but they're still looking at it. And I guess I have a question to the consultants is, have you heard about this? Is this something that you as consultants have talked to other municipalities about? And is there merit in our municipality pursuing something like this?
So through the mayor, thank you for the question. We have seen this and followed this in the news, especially because it was pertinent to the project we were working on here, as well as it being a novel approach. And it certainly is a novel approach. There's many approaches that municipalities are taking across Canada. It's a situation in which, unfortunately, Saugeen Shores is not unique in having the same challenge that many others are. But what I would say is this would be another reason why ultimately the town would want to ensure that it has the foundations in place to make sure that as it decides to make investments or divestments or improvements or any sorts of activities like that, that we're doing so in an evidence-informed manner. With that said, I can't speak to the efficacy of this is the right move or the wrong move or anything along those lines. I don't want that to be misconstrued.
Just last comment, and with the research I did, and it was interesting to note these 3 physicians, one starting in January from overseas, another one coming from the States as we speak, one from London, Ontario, all taking on a roster of 1,200 patients because, and I think Jill will tell you, will agree with me, I think, that today's physicians, because of the amount of administrative work, paperwork has to be carried out, that really consumes a lot of their hours, where doctors can't be doctors, or they're doing too much administrative work, that you know, or the patient registry with our current doctors, I think it's around 500, 600, 700, but I could be wrong about that, Jill. I think but the VONs are around 500, 600. But what it's allowed with eliminating the administrative work, the paperwork, is that they're able to take on a lot more patients. So anyways, I just think it's something that's unique. I know the argument is the province should be doing this. I get that. I understand that it is a provincial responsibility. I understand that. But how well has the province done for physician recruitment in the last 5, 10 years? That's my question. So I just think it's something we really need to, it's a paradigm shift. It's thinking outside the box, but I just think it's something that I could support number 3, I think. But I think I like to be able to think that we could research as part of that number 3 with that $80,000, that 18-month contract, that we could perhaps research that. Speak to Aurelia, get on a Zoom call with the mayor of Colwood and talk about the benefits of what they're doing, why it's working, and could it be possible for this community?
Thank you. So I got Councillor Halpin and then Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. A couple of my questions have been answered already, and the cost of the study, et cetera. But we spend $125,000 per year on doctor recruitment. Does this include the bonuses or cost of loans, incentives to doctors, what we're currently spending?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question. It does include all of what you identified except for the loans. Those are separate.
One of my big questions when we're, I'm one of those very frustrated that we're picking up the provincial government's work. And I also feel the more we pick up, the happier they will be and the more that they will kind of download on us. So I think it's one of those situations where the more we do, the more they will let us do. But one of my frustrations is we don't really have a number to tell the public how much we're spending on healthcare, because a lot of these incentives and things are private information, rightfully so. I'm not arguing that, but also how much we're spending on the medical clinic and spending on supplies and everything. And if I would feel just way better if the public knew how much we were spending, and then the public could respond to that. And I don't know that this report, it seems to me it's going to take, we're going to have to spend, we spend 100K and it looks like we're going to spend another 80 or 100K again on top of that, just to be able to say how much we're spending on healthcare, and does the public really approve of that? And if the public approves of it and they say, yeah, keep spending on healthcare, then that's okay. But that's kind of my stumbling block here. Like we owe it to the public to tell them how much we're spending on healthcare.
Manager of Strategic Initiatives.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your questions and comments. Part of the reason, we went into this study and that's exactly what we wanted to find out. What do we actually spend on healthcare? And what we found out was we've got some homework to do before we can find out what that number is. And so that's kind of what the pathway is suggesting, is that we do a little more work, a little deeper dive, and we figure out, we start to put the program in place so that we can start to answer some of these questions. And the basis for the pathway is that council will be leading that every step of the way. So we'll come back to council with a report. For example, around recruitment, we could set up incentive packages that are standardized and that the public is aware of it and that there are metrics attached. So, and again, that would be council led and endorsed.
Okay, very good. It seems though that if they have up to 18 months to suggest 18 months to define subsidies and 9 or 10 months to define service level agreements. It seems like a long time to get to that point. is there no quicker way? Like, you're just saying we're gonna spend this money now and we're gonna have some answers in 9 to 12 to 18 months on a lot of it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your question. I've never done this before, so maybe it'll go faster. It's really hard to know. I would hope that it would go faster, but it does take some juggling. That's kind of what we've tried to outline with the different options, because we can't do everything all at once. So, you know, it's a balance game between, do we continue to do recruitment, or do we work on the pathway and set up the program? You know, it's a bit of a juggle. So those are estimates. You know, could it be done quicker? I hope so, but you know, I've never done this before.
Through the mayor, to add on, sorry, not to cut you off, Counselor. To add on to Jill's points, this is one of those instances where this is why the resourcing in those options that are presented is so important, because there is, I'll say, a decent amount of work that is available here, and it's a case where possible, yes, we want to go as quickly as we can, but this is a bit of a go slow to go fast situation. If we rush the development of the foundations and the programs, we'll inevitably have gaps, which then can lead to unforeseen issues in the future, would be the only pieces I would add.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the work that you do in this. I know it's a difficult situation. And my frustration is not with staff or the work that staff does. So please understand that. But I am very frustrated with this whole system that we have.
Thank you. Councilor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I will say that several of my questions have been answered. Pausing physician recruitment is, in my world, it's off the table. We can't do that. We have to continue with that. Having said that, and through you to Jill, you're part of the combo Kincardine Saugeen Shores physician recruitment. When I read this report and everything that it entails, I get the impression that we're saying we'll go our own way. We're not interested in Kincardine anymore. I hope I'm wrong, but that's the impression I got.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question. No, we would continue our partnership with Kincardine.
Thank you. But if you look at the options that are presented, nowhere, I think only once in the report did it mention Kincardine, and I think it mentioned Sauble Beach as well. And I'm concerned that we worked out this agreement with Kincardine for the second time, and I certainly would want to keep that in play, because if we were to walk away from it, I'm sure Bruce Power may walk away from it as well. Are you comfortable with that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I am. I should let you know that Crystal Murphy, the physician recruiter in Kincardine, and I spent a lot of time together. We're on the phone with each other a lot. We were just in Ottawa together at the University of Ottawa Family Medicine Recruitment Fair, and we've been talking about our review, and so I suspect that partnership will continue.
I might just add, having been part of negotiating that agreement, was it was designed in such a way as to provide a lot of latitude to both parties, both Saugeen Shores and Kincardine, to do their own thing and to receive support from Bruce Power to do that. So it's very much envisioned in there that both parties would do their own work under the rubric of support from Bruce Power financially. So I wouldn't be too worried about it, Councillor, would be my point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Jill. It was mentioned, I believe, by the Vice Deputy Mayor. We were talking about, say, option 3 and 4. Would we need a consultant as well with those? You're shaking your head, So maybe I'm going to get you to answer. Would there be consultants involved in these contract staff if we were to hire?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we would not.
Okay, so that means that if we hired a part-time contract staff, they would go to work on this, but we wouldn't be going back, spending another 100,000 or so on a consultant to see us through it. The contract staff would be doing the legwork, and that's nothing against the consultants we've had. They've done a terrific job on this. Thank you.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, the deputy mayor. Oh, sorry, we'll get Councillor Stack first. Councillor Stack hasn't spoken yet, so we'll get Stack first. Go back around. Councillor Stack.
Just, I guess, a couple of comments. I thought the report was really useful, and I think a couple of things. I think it's already been said, illustrative of all the work we do on a fairly staff does on a shoestring budget. So I think just to sort of echo some of the recognition done before, I think it should be noted how much is actually done on such a little budget. I think obviously it would be off character for me to not do my favorite thing, which is to emphasize that I think the province is once again failing this municipality on some key issues. I think this is a good example where, to Councillor Halpin's point, we're filling in the gaps for a province and a provincial government that's failing to do some of their core obligations. We see some of the policies they're doing, and I think this is a real example of communities having to step up where we don't really have the jurisdiction or the capacity to fill it up. So I think I'd like to see as we move forward, I know we sort of regularly write and correspond with the government, but I think this is a good example of when we have a success, it should be clear that it was not the province that provided any of the successes we'll talk about in future. It should be recognized that it's the staff and the people in the community who are paying taxes on multiple levels to get services done by a municipality rather than the province. And I think that should be recognized going forward. And I think it just continues to be a real disappointment from this government. This is a core issue for us and something we've sort of seen, certainly for my entire tenure here. And I think it's distressing when we talk about orphan patients in a community that's growing and aging simultaneously. I did have one kind of just clarification question. And it's on page 15 of the actual report. It talks about the 15% reduction in the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, and then it's generating a $13 million shortfall. Is that a $13 million shortfall to Saugeen Shores or to all municipalities? It wasn't clear.
Through you, Mayor, sorry, I'm just referring to the report itself here, finding the exact reference that you're talking about. 1 second.
I think probably a member staff could speak to it. The CAO can probably speak to it.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know the reference exactly, but yeah, we have seen a reduction in the OCF transfer payments to the town. That was highlighted in our budget conversations last year. I'm going to rely on what you read, which is the $13 million mark. You'll see when we head into budget this year that we've had a bit of a favorable outcome on that, but we haven't got the $13 million back.
And then just sort of one question for clarification. So when sort of we approve the recommendations in the report, if that's where we go, like in terms of what council will see in terms of providing directions on the pathway, just to be clear, I think, Jill, you noted it already, but so will we get sort of incremental reports for each recommendation, like each activity under the pathways and then follow through with the actual execution?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, is there anybody who hasn't spoken yet wishes to say anything? If not, I'll go back to the deputy mayor. The deputy mayor.
Thank you. And regarding what the vice deputy mayor said about that interesting idea, a couple of us heard the same CBC stuff, so it's kind of interesting to consider. CBC also regularly has stuff from Kingston and that part of the province. They seem to do some really creative things and have some success. I know Jill's been paying attention to some of that too. I wanted to ask though that, we've really been talking in many ways related to recruitment of physicians, but the report also is about retention of physicians. And to the vice deputy mayor's comment about, the administrative side and that sort of thing. The last time I was fortunate enough to get in to see my doctor. Before I walked out the door, he already had his report done concerning our time together through AI. Are we providing, or have we been asked to provide any support for the two medical facilities that were involved with the clinics to make sure that the right capacity is there for whatever they need to get that AI technology into their practices? Has that come up at all? Like, I'm not a tech person at all, but are the supports there for that to creep into practices as doctors who are here are able to implement it? Because it was Dr. Khan, and he was very excited. He's like, "Look at this, it's done already." And I'm like, "When did you do that?" He goes, "I did it while we were talking." And it was very powerful. So are we helping at all, or are there opportunities for us to contribute to that as a retention kind of activity?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, that is funded through the OHT. The Grey Goose OHT has that. But that it is a great thing to do for retention, for sure.
It's the Ontario Health Team. Are there further questions? Councillor Halpin?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I moved here from not so far away, but I kept my doctor where I moved because I knew that I would never get one here. And so I'm not an orphaned patient, but I don't have a doctor here. It's a little, in one way, maybe a little bit disappointed that we're only focusing on doctors and not on nurse practitioners. And I know we've done some great work and we've got nurse practitioners in, but also I see a nurse practitioner. I'm not sure I've seen my doctor in the last 4 years. And nurse practitioners can spend a lot of time with people. They're a lot less expensive, and it's a great option. And should we not be focusing on that at all?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That's one of the things that we'll decide as we bring reports back to you to determine the kind of approach we want to take. Because every, initiative, every recruitment effort takes more time and resources. It's a whole new market. So, the short answer is yes, the more primary care, professionals we have, the better, but there is a calculated approach to doing that.
Okay, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
One quick question, Jill. The idea I presented about Colwood, Victoria, BC, I feel I may be alone on that. I wasn't sure we gained too much traction tonight, but I'm just wondering, do you know of any municipalities close by, province of Ontario, where there's anything similar to that at all, where the province of Ontario funds a doctor, where they help with administrative costs? You mentioned something today about a local doctor, and I can't recall the conversation completely.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question. There is a model that exists already, a funding model through the province where people can draw a salary. It's actually the health center in Sauble Beach runs that way, where doctors receive a salary. They get vacation and benefits. They don't have to do any administration work. And so that model in Ontario exists already. Yeah. Thank you.
I would say there's a municipality closer to home that provides administrative support to its doctors. It's called the Town of Saugeen Shores. We're doing it right now in the Southampton Medical Clinic, where we provide a great deal of administrative support. We provide purchasing support. We provide management support in that facility. So we're doing an awful lot of that already. Something that the town innovated before I showed up quite a long time ago. I might just make a couple of comments, I guess. First, I want to say thank you to you, Jill, beyond this report and this work. But I mean, you basically carry this program on your shoulders at this point, right? You're doing all the work on this, and you've done a tremendous job for the municipality. And since you've come back to service here, and before then too, actually, in both of your tenures with the Town of Saugeen Shores, you worked on physician recruitment. So anyway, we really appreciate that work. And I really believe, just back to my first comment, that we need to we need to take these steps that you're talking about to really understand these costs, because the costs that are listed in this report do not at all encapsulate what the town of Saugeen Shores is spending on this. Because of that administrative support, like our treasury is seized with this work to a great extent. Municipal administration, right? And a huge amount of staff time spent on this. Like, we need to enumerate what those costs are. A huge cost benefit calculation needs to be done there, if nothing else, against all that time and effort that's spent. So we really need to get a picture of that, because the amount that the taxpayer of the town of Saugeen Shores is already spending on healthcare is significant, and it's significantly more than is in this report, and the numbers in this report are significant. We need to get our hands around that. We need to understand better how we manage all of these, our facilities, these contracts we have, how that administration that we are providing, all of those things. So we need to do this work. And I've heard a few comments about how we can proceed with that. So I think we'll do that. But the thing that concerns me is, and I've heard quite everybody say here that we don't want to pause physician recruitment and we don't want to stop physician recruitment. I understand that. But I read this report and I don't see any empirical evidence presented that it works. Like, all I read in this report is political arguments, that we might be judged negatively if we don't do physician recruitment, reputational risks, and then speculation, service gaps likely materialize, longer wait times are possible. It's all, these are political arguments. I can come up with political arguments, but I hire a consultant to come up with some evidence. So I guess the question is, what's the evidence that physician recruitment works? Currently, the town of Saugeen Shores, according to this report, 17% of our population is orphaned. If you Google the percentage of the Ontario population that is orphaned, 16%. It's basically exactly the same. We're average. So in spite of all of our efforts, and we've spent a lot on all this money that the taxpayer is spending, and it's a lot of money, we're right on average. I mean, I guess so a question of the consultant is, like, what's the evidence that this works apart from the political arguments and the speculation? And also, have you looked at a municipality that doesn't do any recruitment at all? And what's the percentage of orphan patients there?
So through you, thank you for the question. This is it's an important one to discuss. I'll address your second part first. Apologies, I'm getting over or falling under a cold. In terms of municipalities and whether they are, we looked at groups that do no recruitment. We selected the comparator municipalities that you see in the report based off of, I'll say, conversations with Saugeen Shores. So it's partly based on proximity. It's partly based on an understanding of practices that are similar in size and scope to the town. We didn't, I'll say, do research to say which municipalities are doing nothing out there. That's who we want to look at. And part of the challenge also with that is the fact that it's difficult to actually know which municipalities are doing nothing, because it would need to be self-identified by a municipality to say, we are doing nothing to support physician recruitment or retention. This links a bit to that empirical evidence side of the question you asked. And so, I mean, right now, there is a lot of attention on physician recruitment across Canada, with the conversation even of BC coming up today. And, that's because there's a lot of groups that are having, I'll say, this same challenge. But that said, the amount of empirical research and evidence that's actually in place is next to nothing. There's really limited evidence empirically about this. And this goes back to, once again, the need to then actually have a, I'll say, self-declared, we do nothing. If a physician comes to us and says, we'd like to engage, we won't provide any support or anything, role from a municipality. Anecdotally, what we can say is that what we've seen from municipalities and OHTs is that there is I'll say, a push to have OHTs and municipalities work more closely together. And especially in many small and rural municipalities across the province, there's an increasing focus on this, but there's I'll say, varying degree of success that you can see. And that's ultimately because while many small and rural municipalities are fighting in many ways to maintain their health services within their municipalities, ultimately, OHTs themselves are relatively new bodies, and they're committees of sorts. And the reason why I'm focusing on OHTs in this case is if a municipality were to say, you know what, we're not doing any of this work, we're going to pass it to this provincially, I'll say, designated body to take it on. Part of the challenge becomes that it's a community approach. And what I mean by that is if if a single municipality has a concern that's not the exact same concern and not being addressed necessarily by the OHT, it's a challenge to say this needs to be everybody's priority. And so as we look at and think about, from the perspective of the evidence, unfortunately, what we have is anecdotal, and it is these other elements that you see within the report around rationale to stay within this space. I'll pause there, assuming
Sure.
maybe follow.
It's just hard to imagine that municipalities have been doing this for more than a quarter century, right? Like this town has been, so I assume most others have been too, right? And we don't even know, we can't even say, like, nobody, we can't even say that whether it's working or not, and how many hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent by municipalities across the entire country doing this, of taxpayer dollars that we're pouring into the ever expanding maw of this machine chewing up our money. And we can't even answer whether or not it works. Like we have created this massive physician recruitment industrial complex, and we are just, and we're terrified. Of course, we're all terrified. Who isn't terrified? And everybody's terrified of not having a physician. And that fear is driving councils like this to spend huge amounts of money. And we can't say to the taxpayer, oh, by the way, it works. Right? So like it's very hard then. And now we're being asked to spend even more. And the demand will continue to expand and contend more staff. And we still won't be able to say whether it works. And we're going to be right, and we're right on the provincial average. So like that becomes very challenging. Like, and so I appreciate everybody, that we want to continue in physician recruitment, and I get it. Honestly, I understand the sentiment, because everybody who votes for everybody at this table, including me, is terrified of not having a family doctor, wants to have a family doctor, and wants us to do something about it. And of course they do, and they should want us to do something about it. I just don't know if I can say to them that what we're doing here is actually helping them. And we're taking a lot of their money, and I can't really be certain. And I can't be certain, honestly, reading this report, that what's recommended here will help them either. In fact, I'm pretty doubtful, honestly, that it will. So I think we need to do this study, that we need to do the report you're talking about, because I want to understand, and I want to be able to tell the taxpayer at least what Councillor Helpin asked, how much money they're actually spending. And then, but I would really like us to, before we spend any more money, like us to be able to answer the question, is this really going to do something to get you a doctor? Because I want everybody in this town to have a doctor, but I sure don't want to waste their money on stuff that's not going to result in anything. So those are my comments. We'll get Councillor Helpin and then Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I was kind of hoping with this report that we would at least be able, at the end of the $100,000, to say, Saugeen Shores, this is how much you're spending on physician recruitment right now. And here is a path forward. But we still, after this report, we still don't know how much, we still can't tell the public how much we're spending on healthcare. And I see that as a frustration. So we spent 100, and then we're going to spend 180 to find out how much we're spending. So it's a frustration.
Yeah, Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I guess I would say, like Jill, you named 2 of the 3, and then of the physicians who've come in the last couple of years. The third one, is that somebody who is local?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that was Dr. Whitaker, who has since gone.
And haven't we recruited somebody to work in the ER or some other kind of specialized doctor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we did. Yes.
Well, I mean, I would count that person in the mix as well. Having a ER doctor is valuable. And I guess I would say that, I mean, it's obviously, it's sort of anecdotal. It's not evidence-based, but not evidence-based in terms of statistics. But if those at least 2 doctors and at one time 3 doctors came who were not from Saugeen Shores, didn't have existing ties with Saugeen Shores family or whatever, and we brought them in, then that is some degree of success as a response to an outreach or network that we provided. And so to me, I mean, I guess if we don't have local folks or people with local ties somehow coming, then our statistics of 17% could be much, much higher than the provincial average. So to me, I think our physician recruitment is working to some extent.
Yeah, it's just hard to prove a negative, right? Because you don't know, we're right on the average, so maybe we would have had just as many come without us doing anything at all. Any further comments? So I think I've heard, I'll just try to get us on a decision here. So I've heard from 2 members that they support option 3 and 1 member said they support option 4. So it looks like we're swinging around 3 and 4 here. I think I heard a lot of folks very keen to do as much recruitment carried on as we can. So there's option 4 is really your sort of your number 1 option if that's the way you want to go. I would entertain a motion. So the resolution is just that council supports the review of option blank as the preferred option for the implementation of the foundational pathway during the 2026 business plan and budget deliberation. So I would just entertain a motion from a member to consider one of the options. Councillor Grace.
Okay, I would go with option 4. It's $30,000 more than option 3, but it's an accelerated timeline with full-time staff working on both initiatives.
Okay, so the councillor moves option 4. Is there a seconder for option 4? Councillor Davinsky. So that's now moved and seconded. The council supports the review of option 4 as the preferred option for the implementation of the foundational pathway during the 2026 business plan and budget deliberations. Any questions or comments of the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, pardon me, the deputy mayor.
I wanted to ask this cost of $110,000. The indication here is offset by existing budget and funding. We haven't yet had our budget meetings. So by voting for this, what are we voting to say this is definitely going to happen? Are we determining $110,000 when we haven't had the bigger discussion yet? Or is it just to get it onto the table at those meetings?
So just to clarify, what this really is you giving me your opinion. And I will, whatever you select here is what will arrive in the draft budget tabled by me next month. So then it'll be in the budget, and then of course council can amend the budget in any way it sees fit. So it's not final approval the budget will be final approval. Okay, Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. We currently spend $125,000 a year on physician recruitment, which includes activities and incentives and everything like this. So now, will that mean that next year that we'll be spending $235,000, or how will that work?
Manager Strategic Initiatives.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we essentially will be using the existing budget to fund this. So no.
Thank you. And just to be very clear, so instead of spending the $125,000 that we spent last year on physician recruitment, we're going to spend $110,000 next year on this physician recruitment plan.
The manager.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, is there anything further? If not, then I'll ask all in favor. And opposed? That's carried. Okay. Okay, so now we're on to 9.3, the 2023 and 2024 annual audited financial statements and the treasurer. Oh, sorry, the Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce the report today because it is a bit of an unusual report. It's not normal to be presenting 2 audit years at one time. However, today we'll be presenting the 2023 and the 2024 audited financial statements. In the past, audit reports in Saugeen Shores are presented approximately in the 4th quarter of the year following the year being audited. Excuse me. In 2024, our finance division had significant staffing changes, and with that came associated time to get staff up to speed into the new roles. This caused delays in meeting the typical timing. This was exacerbated when at the beginning of this year, we had 2 staff members go off on medical leaves that further delayed finalizing the audited statements. In addition to the challenges that Saugeen Shores is facing with the audits, all municipalities have been faced increased audit workload as a result of significant new audit requirements. Additionally, our audit firm was acquired by another firm recently, causing growing pains on the auditor side. In order to get back on track, we decided to handle the 2023 and the 2024 audits congruently in order to be able to process through the 2 years efficiently. Finance staff appreciate the added resources that council has added to the finance division this year and the additions that council will be considering as part of the 2026 business plan. These resource level corrections will enable staff to improve the timetable to bring financial information to council. As I stated earlier, typically audited financial statements have been presented to council in the 4th quarter. In 2026, finance staff are committing to deliver the 2025 audited financial statements by August, so significantly earlier than council has normally seen. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge all the hard work that Dan and his team have done, along with our auditors, MNP, to get the 2024 audited results completed, while at the same time finalizing the 2023 audit. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Dan to cover some highlights and for him to introduce our auditors.
Thank you, Jim, and through you, Mayor Charbonneau. The town and the town auditor, MMP, have concluded the work related to the 2023 and 2024 financial audits, and the financial statements are now being presented to council. I also want to take this opportunity to thank town finance staff and all staff who participate in providing the many financial entries, the backup, all the working papers, and also thank the team at MMP for their work to produce these statements. The results show that the town is in strong financial standing with good cash position, reserves, and debt in 2024 that uses only 31% of the town's provincially regulated annual repayment limit. And with that, I will pass it over to Tracy Smith of MMP to present the statements.
All right, thank you. I'd like to thank the council for inviting me here this evening. I also have Robin Strangwick-Holder, who was also involved in the audits for 2023. This is the first year as Dan mentioned, presenting as MMP. We're not BDO. So as of January 1st of 2025, 21 of our rural offices of BDO transitioned to MMP. So all of the former offices in Grey and Bruce County of BDO are now operating as MMP. And MMP is a Canadian national firm with offices, 150 offices across Canada, just the same as BDO was. So we still are a national firm. We are presenting both the 23 and 24 financial statements today, but I'm just going to provide highlights of the 2024 financial statements as it also has the 23 comparative amounts on that. We would like to thank Jim, Dan, Danica, and all of their team for their assistance with the audits and in getting these to you today. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask as we go through the presentation, and we can stop and address any issues that you have as we go through the presentation. As your auditor, it is our responsibility to communicate with those charged with governance. Our audit findings report is in the agenda. It is the one with the fuzzy picture. The picture is meant to be fuzzy. That is not a printing issue. Fuzzy picture and the coffee mug with the M&P logo are standard for all correspondence from M&P. The report contains all the required communications in accordance with Canadian auditing standards. The communication is very similar year to year and similar to the BDO communication, as the content is defined by those accounting standards. So I'll just provide a brief summary of the letter. We've substantially completed the audit. In order to release the finals, we do need approval of the financial statements by council. We need to obtain a signed representation letter from your management team up until that approval date. And we also have to do a little bit of subsequent event work up until the approval date. On an annual basis, as your auditor, we are required to confirm we are independent. M&P does confirm that we are independent and we are qualified to issue an independent auditor's report on the financial statements. Materiality was used during our audit for 2023. It was $1,275,000. It was $1.4 million for the 2024 audit. We are required to communicate with those charged with governance if we find any deficiencies in internal controls. We report that we did not find any deficiencies in the internal controls that we were testing during our audit process. And lastly, I just want to highlight, we are required to report to those charged with governance if there is any unadjusted differences that we found during the audit. Those are attached to the representation letter in the package. However, they are very small and not material to the audit. So no changes have been requested. So those are the highlights of the communication. If there's any questions about that, I'll move on to the financial statements. So the draft financial statements are found in a separately in your agenda package. And again, I'll just provide a very high level overview of those financial statements. And I'm focusing on the 2024 financial statements. So if you are following along, please make sure you're with the 2024 financial statements. Our audit report is on page 2 of the financial statement package. An audit is the highest level of assurance that can be provided by a public accounting firm. The management of the town is responsible for preparing the financial statements. The financial statements are the representation of the historical transactions of the town for 2023 and 2024. It is our responsibility as your auditor to give an opinion on those financial statements that are prepared by your management team. Our audit report is on page 2. In the middle of the middle of the audit report, as in prior years, we have qualified our audit opinion with respect to capital assets, and that is detailed in the first paragraph of the basis of qualified opinion. The next 2 paragraphs are a new qualification in 2023 and 2024. In 2023, there were new accounting standards that became effective for asset retirement obligations and financial instruments. Many municipalities did qualify for the asset retirement obligations in 2023, and some are still continuing to qualify in 2024 to give their management team time to gather the evidence, gather the documents to be able to report those liabilities on the financial statements. So as part of the town's update on their capital asset management plan, your management team will need to identify and quantify the asset retirement obligations. Those are mainly costs of removing asbestos and other toxic substances from old buildings in the future, as the old buildings are renovated or torn down. So as part of these, the new standards for the liabilities, the post-closure costs for the landfill and monitoring needs, that will also be needed to be calculated differently. So that will be in place for next year. On page 5 is the statement of financial position or your balance sheet. So that is a point in time on December 31st of 2023 and also on December 31st of 2024. On December 31st of 2024, total assets were 68.4 million compared to 66.3 million in 2023. The largest portion of that is 51 million in cash and investments, and that was similar from 2023 to 2024. There was a significant increase in your trade and other receivables from 23 to 2024. That is largely a result of over $1 million being receivable for HST for capital projects that were in progress, and also 3 million in grants that were receivable for capital projects. So there was no collection issues with that increase in the receivables. The other difference is in the long-term investments, and there was a decrease in the long-term investments as 3 million was received from Wisterio to repay the note that was owing to the town. This town still does own 25% of the common shares of the Wisterio Power. In terms of liabilities, on December 31st, 2024, total liabilities were 62 million, and an increase of 32 million from the prior year. That's largely a result of the long-term debt, $14 million long-term debt that was taken on for the new aquatic and wellness center. The accounts payable also increased over the prior year, and again, that's a timing issue with the large capital projects that you had on the go over the 2024 year end. I do want to highlight that what is included in your deferred revenues. Your deferred revenue was 19 million, and that actually includes the funds that you've collected for development charges and grants and donations. So it's actually not a liability, it's just revenue that has not yet been recognized and will be recognized once you incur the capital the expenses to which those funds are related. That brings us down to the net financial assets. The financial assets less the financial liabilities is a key financial indicator. Again, there was a significant decrease as you've taken on debt to fund the capital assets, but as Dan noted, you are well within your debt limit that is allowed for the town. The physical assets are costless amortization, and again, you can see the very large increase of 31 million as the town invested in capital assets, which also increased the accumulated surplus. So the accumulated surplus is the equity the town's built up over time, both physical and monetary assets. Those details can be found in note 8, but that includes 198 million invested in capital assets and 35 million in reserves. The next page is the statement of operations and transactions for the year. The revenues totaled 53 million in 2024 and 51.5 million in 2023. The revenues include all your external revenues for both capital and operating purposes, but that does not include any of the transfers from reserves. The expenses include all operating expenses and amortization, but the actual expenses do not include your capital purchases or your transfers to reserve. The total expenses for 2024 were 42 million compared to 38.2 million in 2023. You'll notice a significant difference in the actual and the budget amounts, and that is because in the budget amounts, you are not required to budget for amortization, but for accounting purposes and presentation of the financial statements, you're required to include that in your actual expenses. The external revenue less expenses gives you your annual surplus of $11.1 million or 13.3 million in 2023. Again, it's important to note that that is not your operating, that's not an operating surplus. That's not the amount that affects your budget or your tax rates. The operating surplus for 2023 was just over 1.2 million, and in 2024 it was 665,000. So those operating surpluses for those years were transferred to the tax stabilization reserve. The annual surplus on this page, the $11.1 million, that focuses on the long term. It should always be positive, and it should always be a large positive number, because from that annual surplus, you're required to fund your capital assets, and you're required to repay your debt from those funds. So on the next page, we take that $11.1 million and we adjust it for the capital purchases that were actually paid and for the amortization that was included in the actual expense numbers on the previous page. You spent 39 million of an anticipated 68 million in capital. The Aquatic and Wellness Center was still under construction at the end of 2024 and not completed until, well, I think it was opening soon. But in the budget, the whole amount was included. So that brings us down to the net increase or decrease in net financial assets, also an important financial indicator. It can be positive or negative. Neither one is better. Your actual is negative 20 million decrease as you use debt and reserves to fund your large capital projects. You had budgeted for a $49 million decrease, and that difference again is because the capital projects weren't all completed at the end of 2024. So that's a brief overview. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much. So there is a resolution that council approved the 2023 and 2024 financial statements. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Councilor Mayette, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Questions or comments from members of the Deputy Mayor?
I have a couple through you. I don't know if they're to the auditor, perhaps to the Director of Corporate Services, but the documents are marked as draft. So when does the draft disappear from the documents?
As I mentioned earlier, we can't release the finals until council approves them. So once you approve them tonight, then we need to get some further documentation from your management team, assigned representation letter, and we have to do a little bit of subsequent event work, but it shouldn't be a significant time difference before we are able to release the finals. The audit is substantially completed at this point.
Okay, thank you for that. A couple of questions related to what is in the 2024 audit. This might be a question for the Director of Development. Note 11 shows that in the 2024 budget, we had budgeted for the receipt of $4 million in development charges, but then the actual only shows 400,000 were collected. I'm sure there's a very real response. Is this because of exemptions that we made for a number of apartment buildings or something like that? Because it was one of the most dramatic differences that I saw when I looked through the numbers.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor Charbonneau. The number that's in there for the actual for development charges is the amount of revenue that was booked. So that's the amount that was used against project costs. It's not the amount that was collected in development charges. The amount that was collected in development charges is higher than that and just sits as a deferred revenue rather than a revenue. The $4 million budget there is meant as a placeholder for the rough estimate of collections through the year.
Okay, still a big discrepancy there between 4 million and then 400,000 being in the column that shows actuals. And this has been asked in previous years, but note 22 talks about $43.5 million sitting in the bank in one financial institution. I know it's been asked before, but I'll just ask again, why is that a desirable action instead of diversifying and spreading the funds out?
Thank you for the question. It's normal for an organization of our size to have substantial cash in its operating well above the, $100,000 per depositor per financial institution. We have now passed a new investment policy, and as we evolve in our financial forecasting, we will be able to spread out our cash amount to different laddered GICs and different investments. And so that work is ongoing. We do use one investment fund for investments, and we look to invest more of the funds going forward. But it is normal for an organization of our size to be to have a substantial cash amount in its operating account.
It's just a nice, wonderful amount of money to have access to. If I could get a little more clarification, and I appreciate what the auditor said, because I had written down a question about in 2024, it looked like we were budgeting for a surplus of $19 million, and then in the actual column, it was 11.1 million. But then, you went further and referenced that the operating surplus was about $680,000, I think you said, and that ended up in the tax stabilization reserve. If I could just ask for clarification, it's my understanding that every dollar received from ratepayers literally flows through the tax stabilization reserve. So it's not a reserve like some of the other reserves, but how do we keep track, or how do we utilize the surplus, this 600 and whatever it was, $680,000 or something, from 2024? Does it just disappear into the account, or how do we sort of know that it's something that was kind of like a bonus? And I go back to when the tax stabilization reserve was first set up by Laurie Swigger many, many, many years ago, that, our understanding then when we created it was that it was going to be this repository for the operating surpluses at the end of the year, which would then help us kind of adjust, if need be, the tax rate the following year. It's happening a little different now. So I just what happens to that operating surplus? Where does it go? And because it's a nice bonus, and I just wonder how we sort of account for that.
Thank you for the question. The default of any surpluses is the tax stabilization reserve. In certain instances during the budget process, there are projects that are allocated or defined to a certain, excuse me, that's ringing a bit, that are being tied to specific reserves other than tax stabilization, as well as certain accounts. And so at the end of the year, we'll go through and look at which accounts was the spending and the revenue coming into, and any of those accounts that are tied to specific reserves, the money will then flow into or out of those reserves. But the bulk of the accounts are tied to the tax stabilization.
I just wanted to point out in note 3, and again in the 2024 report, it indicates that about $300,000 came in that was part of the pledge package made for the Lamont Sport Park. That's a good news story because, of course, as people pledge, it's nice when the pledges come in. So it was nice. I had never noticed something like that before, but maybe it was because there were 2 years there. So you could see one and then look at the next, how the number came down. So, however, we're encouraging pledges to a number of things to come in, or, as the time comes for them to come in, that's really nice to see, because that's very helpful in the long term to pay for some things. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. It's a good news we heard just a few weeks ago that our wastewater and water is in good financial shape and has good reserves and good plans. And, you know, it seems like the town is in good financial shape. I really like the fact that we're only at 31% of the debt requirement or maximum that we have. So I think that we're in good position, and thank you for your work.
Thank you. Further questions or comments from members? Yeah, I agree with that. An excellent report. Thank you very much, Tracy, for your report this evening, and appreciate the work that staff has done to produce these financial statements. So you've heard the resolution. It's been moved and seconded. I'll ask all in favor. That is carried. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, if
Yeah.
I might just take
Sure.
one more second here, I would just like to announce to council that after 38 years, I am going to be retiring at the end of this year. And so I would like to thank council. It's been many years since I've been involved with Saugeen Shores and actually the predecessor municipalities. So I'd like to thank the council for their support, and I'd also like to thank Dan and Jim and the management team for all their assistance that they've given me over the years. Robin Strangway-Calder will be taking my place next year. So thank you.
Very good. And thank you for your service, and congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
Okay. So with that, then we'll move on to 9.4, which is the urban tree conservation bylaw. And I'm turning this over to the manager, development services.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. About 2 weeks ago, council was introduced the draft tree conservation bylaw and referred this back to council to review this, review the feedback we'd heard. And I just want to highlight, I guess, 5 things we heard. This is concerns about applying the bylaw to small lots, to what extent the bylaw duplicates Bruce County's approach, to what extent the bylaw duplicates other regulations such as the Conservation Authority regulations, examining the municipality of Kincardin's approach, and then the discussion related to resourcing and of enforcement and education. So I want to highlight a few elements from each of those. On the first matter, concerns about applying the bylaw to small lots. The main thrust with this report is to identify that we really have considered the discussion. We looked at EP lots that intersect small lots, and there are 2 zones. They're like residential and EP, and these are already developed lots. Most of these small lots have already got a house and they're developed. And so we've reconsidered this and are proposing an exemption for any lot under a hectare where these EP zone lands intersect residential lands. And there's a couple maps that highlight what this means in the report. These are areas that, under the previous version of the bylaw, they would have been regulated to say that you need a permit to remove trees in those areas. Well, in the bylaw that's in front of council tonight, it would be that no, these lots, for example, at Walnut Street is one example, those lots would be exempt from the bylaw. The second matter is related to the Bruce County bylaw. We spoke with county staff and we read their bylaw. We just want to note a few of the main differences there, regulating different things. And that is generally that while the county bylaw looks at large woodlands of greater than a hectare, our bylaw really is looking at smaller, could be individual trees or smaller woodlots in the urban settlement area. And there is sort of a complication with how the county approaches their application of the bylaw. They have to be woodlots of a particular size, density, and other things that are difficult to determine. And we try to keep it a little more straightforward, just saying they're just, those areas that are zoned EP, PD, and they're over a hectare, for example. And so I guess what it boils down to is that we're proposing making a request to the county to remove the town's settlement area from the county bylaw and just remove that potential for duplication, conflict, what have you, and just say the town's bylaw applies to the settlement area of the town. The county's applies to everywhere outside of that settlement area as well as the rest of the county. There's a correction, I guess, when it comes to item 3, which is there was a discussion last time about how the conservation of regulations applied. Well, we're here to confirm that there's very rare situations where tree removal is actually regulated by the CA. It has to actually affect or potentially affect the floodway, and that is unlikely with most tree removals. Discussion about how Concardin's approaches, and just to sort of lead, it's not usual for us to do this type of examination. We don't, in this case, Concardin's bylaw suits the Concardin context, but when we reviewed it, it was that they were regulating different things. The Concardin bylaw, well, may be appropriate for Concardin. They're only regulating native trees. Ours are all trees. They're only regulating the removal of large trees. Again, we're regulating all trees in these areas. There are other exemptions that the Concardin bylaw takes, which the other key one is that any building permit requiring the removal of a tree are also exempt from the bylaw, whereas we would like to approach that from the front end and say, if there is a tree to be removed to do the examination, then you can get your building permit or other provisions of the bylaw. And with related to enforcement, resourcing, and education, I would like to highlight that there was an interesting discussion, and that we were proposing the investment of a contract retainer for a position, so we could actually pilot the bylaw right away and examine that, and then we return to council at the end of the piloting year to see how the amount of workload, the types of issues that have arisen over, or that might arise over the next 12 months, and report to council at the end of next year. So I leave that here. Kristen Sears, myself, Mark, others are available to answer questions and help the discussion.
Thank you. So there is a recommendation and a resolution that council approve bylaw 96-2025, being a bylaw regulating urban tree conservation, to come into effect on April 1, 2026. The council supports the review of the implementation of the urban tree conservation bylaw during the 2026 business plan and budget deliberations, and the council formally requests the County of Bruce exempt the settlement area of Saugeen Shores from the Bruce County Forest Conservation Bylaw effective April 1, 2026. Is there a mover and seconder? Councilor Grace, Vice Deputy Mayor, questions or comments from members? We'll start with the Vice Deputy Mayor and then Councilor Grace.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I thank you for these changes you've made. I think you've captured the wishes of council very well, Kristen, and I wanted to commend you and Jay and staff for the job you did on this. I think it's a bylaw that's really needed, and it's good to see we're moving forward. I appreciate the follow-up on Kincardine, where I did comment at the last meeting. There were 0 permits issued over a 12-month period, albeit what you've discovered, that there's many exemptions that they grant in the town of Kincardine, which led to 0 permits. So I still believe that, and I did have a motion prepared at the last meeting that I didn't have the opportunity to table because the motion was deferred. But basically, in that motion, it was to talk about a 1-year contract person on a retainer, to hire an arborist, just to, in your wording in the report, to pilot, a 1-year pilot to gauge potential workload pressures. And I think that's the right thing to do. And I think that's what I was driving at, wanted to drive at the last meeting, is we should really take a look at this in a 1-year pilot. So I support that. I think it's good that we hire a person on a retainer. Like we hire a dog catcher, I think, on a retainer for $25,000 a year. And I think that the one question I have about the retainer, the contract person, for, I guess, a qualified forester or arborist, would that person be paid like the dog catcher situation, where they're paid based on a call out? Or do we know that yet? Is it too early in the game to determine that? That's what a retainer would do, or is it a $50,000 contract or more that we'd pay straight up?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question. I think we're envisioning a $50,000 account that we would draw on. We would have an RFP and retain someone, and then we would use them as we need through the year.
So we would use them on a call basis. In other words, if they were called upon to go out in the field, that retainer, we'd pay those funds out of that retainer on a per call basis. So they're not going to be paid a salary of $50,000. It could by the end of the year, depending on the number of call outs, it could be $25,000. Would that be correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's the idea.
Again, Mr. Mayor, I think this is a good recommendation. I'm going to support it, and I really appreciate how well staff have captured the changes.
CAO's comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick point. On that question, I think it's fair that to state that staff don't have a full understanding of what the position would do. And I think there may be responsibilities that we look at contracting in that relationship that go beyond just a call out for a potential permit. So apologies, I don't remember everything from the staff report on the 14th, but there were things like helping get education materials together, that sort of thing. So those pieces would be part of that contract as well.
Okay, I have Councilor Grace next, and then Halpin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. And thank you to Kristen and Jay and Mark for the report and for the changes. I also support the one-year contract, or at least the $50,000 fund to do this. I did some, just a couple of things. I'm really, really glad that we're moving ahead with this. Going back to the 2022 ESAC Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Committee report, we did a public survey. We had 538 respondents. One of the questions was, what do you think the top priority should be for the town in terms of environmental concerns? And there, the number one priority, 66%, said preserve the tree canopy. And this is helping to do that. 72% of the tree canopy in Saugeen Shores is on private lands. And that's a significant factor as well. We're doing a lot to help protect our part of the tree canopy, but I think this will go well, will assist significantly in that. And I think the changes you made in removing those lots that are under 1 hectare, I did some reading on this. I looked at some research from the Journal of International Arboriculture, whatever. I never even knew there was a word like that, but it's actually in your report too. I think you cited that journal or that group. And they did a comprehensive study in the city of Toronto. They cited other studies as well, but a couple of their significant findings. The most destruction to the tree canopy, private tree canopy, comes through development and construction. And so preserving that over 1 hectare will help with that. One of the biggest flaws they identified in the Toronto system, which has been in effect since 2004, is the lack of enforcement, the lack of follow-up, not just in terms of administration of penalties, but in looking at replacement tree planting, which is an important part of this as well, and a very important part of preserving and maintaining the tree canopy. So thank you for your work on it, and I will be supporting passing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Thanks for this report. I do have a couple of questions though. The maps that you showed there showed these little pieces like on Walnut Street and that. They showed little pieces of environmentally protected land that are under 1 hectare. If they're environmentally protected, shouldn't we be protecting them? No, or are we saying that, well, you know what, if people want to cut down all the trees in that environmentally protected land, that's okay because it's under, it's under a hectare.
The manager.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I guess that's sort of a very open-ended question, but without getting into, I guess, a long discussion on it, I think the main thrust of what we're trying is that certainly the EP already regulates the use of that land. You can't get a building permit for those areas. A lot of cases, they are still regulated by the CA4. It's flood hazard potential. So there is still, it's what we heard at the last council discussion was that the tree removal is fine there. Those are lands that are, in the case of the walnut, they're about a quarter acre and they're already developed. And so that was what we heard. But another key element is that we want to make sure there is education. And so what does the bylaw mean? So we're wanting, it's not just putting up a website, it would be a program to try to make sure people understand what the purpose of the tree conservation bylaw is. But at the same time, I guess it would also be a useful educational opportunity to just explain what EP means, what a zoning bylaw regulates versus, because it's not the same bylaw as the tree conservation bylaw. So sorry, hopefully that was clear enough.
Thank you. In 4.1F, it says any trees outlined in an environmental impact study in support of applications or agreements for the Planning Act. It's saying relates to satisfying conditions of approval of site plan or subdivision. So if we're saying to someone, okay, here's a significant woodland, we're gonna let you develop part of it. But now, so it's all broken up into lots, but we told them, oh, you have to maintain a certain amount of tree cover, okay? But will these retained trees be covered by this? Because now you're saying, well, a building lot, like my house lot is less than a hectare. When I had to plan a subdivision, they said we had to retain these trees, but now that's over. I'm a homeowner. It's under a hectare, chop away. Could that not happen?
Yes, and thank you through you, Mayor. The answer is no, this is a bylaw that explains the exemptions to this bylaw. If you have an EIS that's implemented through a subdivision agreement, also a bylaw, for example, and it requires retention of those trees, you are required to retain or manage those trees in accordance with your subdivision agreement. This particular clause is there so we avoid that conflict, the potential that one bylaw requires the removal or allows the removal and another says no, and that's a conflict. So we're removing that conflict and saying that you're regulated through another means.
Okay, and one more short one, please, if I could, Mayor, through you. So I really like the town bylaw, like for the town lands. And I like that we're protecting our big wood lots and that anyone planning development there can no longer come in and just clear cut before they're going to need permits, they're going to need to talk to us. But when it comes down to it, what are we really left monitoring? Because how many like private lots are really, like if you look at lots that are under 1 hectare, that's 2 acres. There's not a lot in the settlement area that are over 2 acres. So how much are we really monitoring at this point?
Well, I guess I'd emphasize that it's not just about monitoring, it's about education, it's about enforcement, it's about answering inquiries, addressing inquiries, and creating a review system that allows us to be efficient in the actual monitoring of those lands. And if we were to quantify it, I don't have that at my fingertips, but there are a lot of larger lots, especially the PD and the EP, that are still privately held. What was the 70% are still privately held, and they're not all small lands. So, anyways.
Thank you.
Okay, the Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Davinsky.
Just thank you, and through you, continuing along with what Councillor Halpin just said, I had a question for clarification about what's part of this and what's exempt. And my read of what we put in here is that where a permit is required, it's a privately held lot. So there's 1 check mark. 1 hectare or bigger, there's a 2nd check mark. But then the language in here says, and zoned EP or PD. Do we not have, like, what about a lot that's got, it sounds like it has to be check, check, and a third check, but don't we have some bigger lots that are zoned like with a mix with some kind of residential with maybe a little bit of environmental land on it? Or if a planned development situation, if it gets carved up, then those lots get zoned residential. And I know you mentioned something that maybe what you said to Councillor Halpin would apply here, but if those lands get carved up into larger lots, and then they become zoned R, they may or may not have any environmental, they're definitely not PD anymore. Are they still covered? Like it's that third part that I'm just, is it anything below 1 hectare not included, anything above included? Like that seems to me fairly straightforward, but the addition of this and zoned EP or PD, are those the only possibilities above 1 hectare?
Yes, and through you, Mayor, certainly there's two elements. Well, the third is really, are there trees? So if you're, one, are there trees? Forget the EP's PD or largeness. If there's a tree, there's a potential to be regulated by this bylaw. So there's the tree. The second part, is it a large lot or a small lot? Yes, you have to tick that box. And then the third, to keep it simple, this will help with education and application and enforcement, is it EP or PD? So yes, you have to tick all three. And to address the part where you're talking about where development occurs, when those lands are rezoned, part of the planning process will be to examine how those trees should be retained, protected. And if the study, say through an EIS, says these should be protected, there'll be a planning tool, maybe a subdivision agreement, site plan agreement that says how those trees should be maintained, retained, or removed, or replaced, or compensated. It'll be in that agreement. It comes out of this bylaw, yes, because you're now rezoning it, but then you have a new tool to regulate those lands. But I did want to address like those larger lots that might have 3, 4 zonings at now, they still have to be in, they are large lots. A portion is EP. Well, that's the portion that's regulated and is intended to be regulated by this bylaw.
Okay. For clarification, we already have a full-time arborist, I believe, who works for the town of Saugeen Shores. I think they work out of operations in public works. So given that there's an uncertainty related to, the uptake on this and how much is really needed, this idea of a pilot, is there no possibility of having somebody who's already on the town staff who is called an arborist? How come we can't use them for a pilot project? Why the need for something else? And I'm looking for clarification.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question. Yeah, we reviewed that potential extensively with the operations team and the development of the resourcing points around this. And it was confirmed that the arborist has got a very full slate workload and wouldn't have any capacity to expand the service into this area.
2 more comments to follow up on something that Councillor Grace said. I look forward to, has something comes into play and the education piece, because when you just read the header at the very top of the bylaw underneath the number, it doesn't really say anything about more trees in the ground. So it's more about, cutting and this and this and this. So I look forward to the education so we can kind of get more people to imagine putting something back in the ground, as well as not cutting it down. I did want to ask though, the enforcement piece is hard to understand because I would envision that the potential for enforcement when somebody doesn't get a permit is going to come from a citizen, a resident lodging a complaint. And that's not always the easiest thing to do. And it's not defined in the bylaw very much. The offense part is pretty tiny in content. But that would be the implied thing. If somebody does something that they're not supposed to do, so they don't get a permit, I guess there is the potential for town staff to notice and follow up in that regard. But the other way that someone would, be realized would be via the complaint process, like report a concern or something like that. Is that sort of the implied way that we would handle, or we would sort of have the ability to respond to offenses?
Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. Yes, that's correct.
Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, if we look at the, at 2J, if we look at the comparisons between Bruce County bylaw and the proposed town bylaw, under replacement requirements, for Bruce County, it says no requirement for replacement or payment in lieu when tree removal occurs under a permit. Such is not the case with us. Mandatory tree replacement or cash in lieu payment for future tree planting if tree removal is permitted. I'm just trying to get clarification. Are we talking about developers there when they're going into big properties, or is this going to affect homeowners as well?
Yes, thank you for the question. And so the answer would be it's for those lands that are applicable for this bylaw. So larger lots, the ones that would be subject to future development processes, or just large lots, and our zone PD and our zone DP, or zone DP rather. And it's sort of, it gives me opportunity to emphasize is that mandatory tree replacement isn't just at a development, it's at the removal stage, because the purpose of the bylaw is to conserve that canopy. It's sort of a weird, it's not coincidental. It's not the purpose of the county bylaw. It's managing the removal of the trees, but ours is to conserve the canopy, sort of that sort of approach that we're taking.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. It is my opinion that this bylaw is trying to correct an issue that doesn't exist. We've gotten by this far in our history without a tree bylaw. We're going to be facing some tough challenges with our budgetary process next month. I think we should save 50 grand, and for that reason, I will be voting against this bylaw.
Thank you. Further comments from members? I just wanted to say thank you to staff for their work on trying to chase council around on this and getting somewhere where it seems like most members at least agree is pretty good. Certainly from my perspective, you've made some changes since the last time we saw this that narrows down the number of impacted properties to those that I have heard people are most keen to see protection. People want to see those sort of larger treed lots within the community, whether they're publicly owned or privately owned, protected. I think no one has really called, or at least called me and said, we have to have a policy to prevent somebody from doing normal maintenance on trees in their backyard on a small, on a small neighborhood lot. So but I have heard from people lots of times when a large clearing occurs in a piece of property with a lot of trees in one area where no development is planned, or maybe it is planned development, but nothing's happening, and they've just gone in and clear cut something in order to prepare for something to happen one day in the future, or whatever. I hear a lot of complaints about things like that. So I think this is a good compromise. Does it protect every tree in town? No, it does not. But I also don't believe it's the role of the municipality to protect every tree in town. I think primarily it is the role of property owners to protect the trees on their property, to remove dead ones if they think that's appropriate, to move living ones if there is an issue with that. I have faith generally in the common sense of your average property owner not to clear cut their properties. Very few people want to do that. But there are situations where people with larger tree lots might choose to do that for economic reasons or other reasons. And I think the municipality has an interest in slowing that down and having some say, the public having some say in when that happens, how it happens, and if it does happen, creating a scenario where some new trees get planted or where some alternatives come up so we can preserve that canopy that Councillor Grace gave us the stats on there. And that, people want to see as much of it preserved as possible. And I think the town shares that view. So anyway, it's a good compromise. And I just want to reiterate, I really appreciate the work that staff has done to get us to here, because it's been a long and winding road and a challenge. So thank you for that. So you've heard the recommendation. It's been moved and seconded. I'll ask all in favor. And opposed? That is carried. Thank you. And then we will move on to, 9.5, the analysis of the Environmental Ad Hoc Advisory Committee and the Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report covers 3 of 5 areas of recommendation that arose from the Environmental Ad Hoc Committee last year. 2 have been dealt with on this agenda, as it turns out, the one being the tree bylaw and the other being Partners for Climate Protection. The other 3 that we are tackling in this report are the recommendations to have an ad hoc environmental community engagement committee, to develop environmental champion awards, and to establish an Earth Month. So the report goes through some review of those from a staff perspective, as this was referred to us for our feedback back to council on the resourcing and implementation of it. And to summarize, the recommendations are proposed for implementation on a 1-year pilot basis. And as the 2026 business plan and budget are finalized and prepared, the funding of that community engagement committee would be included as an item for consideration as a proposed amendment. The funding for the committee would be proposed at a level of 5,000, which is in the same neighborhood as the Heritage Committee. So with that, I'll leave my remarks at that and queue up the recommendation.
Thank you. So there is a recommendation that council, there's a recommendation that council receive the analysis of the Environmental Ad Hoc Advisory Committee recommendations report for information. I would just add before I turn over to council that on reflection on this one, that there is a recommendation in here with respect to the Ad Hoc Advisory Committee. So I would suggest to council that it might be prudent for council to refer this question of striking an Ad Hoc Advisory Committee to your striking committee. Where we would then, as a committee, discuss terms of reference and other things. Of course, the committee would be eager for your comments now about your thoughts around the committee and what its structure should look like. But I would suggest in addition to the recommendation that the matter of the Ad Hoc Advisory Committee be referred to the striking committee. Now I talked on long enough, it's late enough. Did I get a mover and seconder for the first part of the recommendation? I didn't. Yeah.
And then
Potentially, although the clerk just advised that this is, so what is happening here is this is another one where council is giving me its view, and I, based on your comments, will ensure this gets added to the budget. And the clerk's advised that if it gets approved in the budget, at that stage, we could consider striking the committee, although, you could do it one way or the other, strike, because committees can get struck without budget lines too. So anyway, I guess I'll put it to you then, how you guys feel, what you want to do. Questions so first, the council received the analysis of the Environmental Ad Hoc Advisory Committee recommendations report for information. Is there a mover and seconder? Councillor Grace, Councillor Stack, questions or comments? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in terms of the timing of this committee, I know at this point it's an ad hoc committee, and the recommendation, I think, of the committee in its report was talking about, that this would be sort of would start its work in November, be shooting towards completion in the spring, sometime after Earth Month. And this recommendation is for a 1-year pilot, which is fine. But having chaired the Municipal Heritage Committee now for several years, I would like the striking committee to consider a model that is maybe 2 years. I don't know if that's possible or not, but my thought is, just from my experience with the Municipal Heritage Committee, we have a very valuable and active promotions subcommittee, which does a lot of work that previously even staff members did. Attending events, organizing the Heritage Committee's attendance and participation in those events, which at one point was kind of done by our former deputy clerk. And I'd like the striking committee to just consider that maybe that this is a year term, a year pilot, and then maybe with the possibility of becoming 2 years. Because I think the problem with having this turnover of just year after year is that then you've got new people that you've got to get up to speed. Having members in there for 2 years means, I think, that it would be, the committee would be more productive in the end. So I'm glad to see these recommendations coming to fruition, and I'm excited, and it's great to see that this report, the staff is assisting in realizing some of the recommendations of this report, of the committee and its report. Thank you.
Thank you. The Vice Deputy Mayor. Oh, no. Further questions or comments from members? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and I echo a lot of what Councillor Grace said. There's a line in the report, though, that says it is not recommended to include the environmental hero tree part of the initiative, noting that it's a little bit cumbersome. I just wanted to throw out there that there's people, we at a recent meeting, it was mentioned about how many trees get sold during the annual tree sale, whether it's just in the spring or if we're lucky enough to have one in the fall too. There's potentially people who would like to buy a tree that don't have any place to plant it. So, perhaps even though it doesn't maybe fit in here, there might be some opportunity if there's a sense that a park is about to have the capacity for some tree planting. The Hero Tree program could be part of the annual tree sale, but it's just, people are buying a tree to plant in a park. But because it was noticeable that it was said that it wasn't going to be included. I just offer that as a comment because I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Further questions or comments from members? Yeah, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Just to follow up with Councillor Grace, and I would recommend also that this gets directed to the striking committee, and I think that 2-year option is very valid and based on some committee work over the years, and I'll certainly bring that up with the striking committee.
So would you like to make a motion that the recommended resolution be amended to add direction that the ad hoc advisory committee be referred to the striking committee? That's moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Grace. So we're talking about amending the resolution right now. So Councillor Stack.
So just, if we amended the resolution to extend the term, is that just to bring it to the striking committees? So can I ask a question about, forget it.
It's fine. We can, if we just deal directly with the referral for the moment, to amend with the amendment, I should say, for the moment. Is there any other comments with respect to the amendment? If not, all in favor? That's carried. Okay. Any further comments then to the main question? Councillor Stack.
So are we, and maybe I'm just tired, so we're considering implementing this. If we could refer to the striking committee, select the people, would this start in 2026? The reason I'm asking, or maybe I'll ask that question first. So, okay, so it would start in 2026. And then would the same members, like community members, participate if we, when the election happens, does the committee not get reconstituted, or does it stay the same?
I mean, it is a challenge, the question you raised, because council will change, council will very likely change, and the striking committee may change, and a new striking committee may choose to do whatever, and a council may choose to do whatever it wishes with its committees. So it is something I think we need to consider in the conversation at striking committee about appointing it. What you will get from the striking committee, like two things will happen in tandem. We'll discuss in the budget whether you're going to fund this. And then from the striking committee, you'll get back a terms of reference, and then you can debate that. And at that time, we can decide whether we like it or not and what we think about the timing of appointments, et cetera, et cetera. Are there further questions or comments? Seeing none, then all in favor? That's carried. I just realized why everybody is jumping up and down over there. I just wasn't looking. For everybody who's watching, like the Jays just scored. Everybody's watching us. I think that if anybody's watching us, so even the people in the room aren't watching us. Anyway, all right, we've got to carry on it. So we better move on quick here. So striking committee report 9.6. Do you have any comments to that, clerk?
No additional comments at this time. However, I would just like to note that in 2026, of course, it's an election year. And so the budget doesn't include the business plan and budget meetings. Those will be taking place in 2027 for 2027 once some orientation has taken place. So if there are any questions, of course, be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. So there is a recommendation that council adopt the council resolution to join the Federation of Canadian Municipalities International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives Partners for Climate Protection Program, recommending that council appoint Councillor Cheryl Grace and the Planning Policy Coordinator to oversee implementation of the Partners for Climate Protection milestones and be the points of contact for the Partners for Climate Protection Program within the municipality, and that council adopt the council calendar for 2026. Is there a mover and seconder? Councillor Davinsky, the Deputy Mayor, questions or comments? Seeing none. Councillor Grace, pardon me.
Just thank you. I appreciate the appointment, and I'm looking forward to working with Ms. Sears.
Yes, and thank you for agreeing to take the appointment. If there's nothing further, then all in favor? That is carried. All right, so there's a consent agenda for you. Anybody wish to vote on any of those items individually? If not, I'll take a mover and seconder that the items, Oh, Diane does, the Deputy Mayor.
It's not about necessarily voting on them separately, but if there is one or possibly two within the communications aspect to go after support, would that be removal so they can be talked about separately? What's your?
Generally, we can handle those within the context of the discussion. So I'll read the resolution that items 10.1 through 10.4 be approved and received for information. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Mayette, seconded by Grace. And we'll just walk our way through these quickly. 10.1 then, the 2025 AMO delegation recap. Any questions on that item? Seeing none. 10.2, the standard lease agreement template. Any questions on that? Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Do all leases go through council, or do all leases need council approval before signing?
The solicitor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of that question, the majority of leases do go before council for approval. When I characterize them as leases, there are, for instance, like facility rentals, which are very administrative, and those would not be presented.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments on that one? Councillor Davinsky? Oh, no? Okay. Okay. All right. So the next one then is the Saugeen Friendship Accord Partnership Annual Report. Any questions on that report? Don't see any. All right. So that was on then to the communications. Interest in any of those items? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And mine was basically from the Edwards Borough Cardinal of the Township EC.ca. And that's basically the OSIF funding. And I just would be interested in making a motion to support that resolution. I think that protecting OSIF funding is important. I'm not sure that the number 5 for the 5% fund be set up will ever materialize, but I think overall, I think it's a good motion to support in terms of protecting our OSIF funding.
So it's moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor that council support the resolution from the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal Resolution on the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund. Is there a seconder? The Deputy Mayor, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Any others? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Through you, I would move for council support for number 7 on the list from Halton Region. It's basically just encouraging the federal government to continue their efforts related to public safety, which also there's embedded in it messaging to the province to consider their responsibility related to courts and crown attorneys and that sort of thing. So I think there's some merit for council to support what Halton Region has said.
The Deputy Mayor moves that council support Halton Region correspondence on public safety requirements to protect our communities. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Halpin. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Any others? Councillor Davinsky.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the communications, number 3, smart correspondence, Saugeen Mobility Host Municipality. In this one, after 25 years, Hanover is not going to do this anymore after this year. And so SMART is looking for a participating municipal council. And I have talked to Jim Buncha, who would be, his department would be in charge of this, I would assume. And he said to let it go for another year, or suggested to let it go for another year. And that's fine. We can do that. However, I can tell you that Aaron Eldersley has turned this down this morning. And I don't know about the other communities. I talked to Stephen today, Stephen LaBelle, and so far no one has stepped up to the plate. And the reason I bring this up is because if we're not going to do it, I think this should come forward and it should be turned down by council. Am I reading more into it than I have to?
Well, I mean, any member could bring it forward. So if you wanted to bring it forward, you could bring a resolution to the table to have it discussed if you wished. So there's a pathway to do that. But I'll turn it over to the CEO. She had another comment she wanted to make.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just in casual conversation, I was talking with the area CAOs about this, and maybe through you, Councillor, back to SMART, it was sort of recommended that with the review that's going on in the regional approach to that, that SMART may want to do an outreach to partners at the regional level. And perhaps the suggestion was that they outreach to Grey County, who is already handling this and doing this type of work on behalf of that partnership, that it may be easy for Grey County to pick it up and manage the gas tax for SMART as well. So I don't know if that comment can go back through you to the SMART board, or if you would like me to try and coordinate an email back to the general executive manager or general manager on that. I'd be happy to.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the CAO, could you handle that? Because I'm not in agreement totally with what you say. So I would want to hear what Stephen has to say on this as well.
Yeah, and I just express agreement as well. I think that it's a regional service. So looking at the regional level to support its operations, I think makes sense. And now it's working with Gray, Bruce, Dufferin, Wellington. Anyway, there's quite a number of counties it's directly in partnership with. So it seems to me this question is going to get itself sorted out and probably at the regional level. Any other comments on any of these? Okay, so we've already dealt with item 11, the motion. So now we will go on to close to public, and I have it's recommended that council move into a closed public session to discuss and provide directions on negotiations. Did I miss something? Well, jeepers, I guess I better do that. So I had that already moved in seconds hard with this consent thing. So I'll ask all in favor of the resolution on the consents. That is carried. Okay. So now it's recommended that council move into a closed public session to discuss and provide directions on negotiations for the disposal of the Centennial Pool. And the resolution is that council move into closed public session in accordance with Municipal Act 2001, Section 2392, C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and K, a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. So mover and seconder, moved by Halpin, seconded by Grace, all in favor, that is carried. Council will now move into a closed public session. Okay, I'm told we're ready, so I'd like to introduce the following resolution. The council arise from the closed public session and resume the regular council meeting. Mover and seconder, Grace and Halpin, all in favor? Carried, and I will report that during the closed public session, council approved council closed the public minutes and discussed and provided directions on negotiations for the disposal of the Centennial Pool. From those discussions, council has a recommendation arising from the closed public session, and that recommendation is that the Director of Development Services be authorized to sign the documentation required to enter into a purchase and sale agreement with the Blue Water District School Board for the Centennial Pool. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Stack, seconded by the Vice Deputy Mayor. All in favor? That is carried. And so now we will go on to bylaws. Sorry, I gotta shift around here. Okay. Yes, so we have one bylaw 96-2025. The resolution is that bylaw 96-2025 is hereby read, passed, and sealed this 27th day of October, 2025. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Stack, seconded by Grace. All in favor? That is carried. Item 16, the confirmatory bylaw, that bylaw 103-2025, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read, passed, and sealed this 27th day of October, 2025. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Stack, seconded by Halpin. All in favor? That is carried. And finally, a resolution of this regular council meeting of October 27th, 2025, hereby adjourns at 9:54 p.m. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? That is carried. I've never